What is up, everybody? Welcome to Pub Sports Radio. This is Stat Diggers, as always, where we go balls deep into the stats for the upcoming card. And this week, we have a very good card, UFC Vegas 32. Dillashaw going against Sandhagen. And this card's great. I mean, there's so many great fights on this card. Like, compared to last night's card, which, by the way, I thought the card delivered, but on paper, it kind of sucked. This card is good. PayPal, somebody in my Discord said that this card arguably could be a pay-per-view card, and I kind of agree with them. I mean, I think this card's stacked, lots of great prospects, some fighters we have not seen in a while, and the return of Dillashaw. So excited for it. And as always, we are here with our Uncle Weezy. Uncle Weezy, are you looking forward to this card, man?
Very much looking forward to this card. PayPal was right on when we talked about this could be a pay-per-view card. There are a lot of very interesting stylistic matchups on this card. Some guys we haven't seen in a while. We even got the return of Diana Belbita. So who isn't fired up about that? This is going to be a great one, you guys. We got the numbers for all these fights. I am ready to go, but I wanted to do one thing real quick here, Brady. I wanted to dedicate this show to the late, great Biz Marquis. I have slept with this picture that says the Biz never sleeps next to my bed for the last 20 years. I've been able to sleep because this man didn't sleep for his entire life, giving us great music, one of the best DJs to ever get on the turntables. This show is dedicated to you. Rest in power, Biz Marquis. I'm going to miss you. Let's make this the best Stat Diggers ever, Brady. I'm ready for this one, man.
Let's do it. I like it. Yep. Rest in peace indeed. Shout to Blood Pirate, the best show in the world. That really do appreciate that. To make money off, thanks to analysis provided here, I've made over $100K this month doing MMA betting. Yeah, shout out to you, man. 100K. There you go. But we have a lot of people in the chat. Everybody hanging out tonight. We have Dan in the chat. We have Mystic Sosa, Jack Attack. Looks like they're going at it a little bit. Nigel Lee. What is up? What's up, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? Good day to you, sir. Good day to you as well. CEO of EPO, I think we're talking about Dillashaw there. See what else we got in here. Johnny Pillman. There is some beef in the chat going on. DFS and Weezy in the building. Yes, sir. But yeah, looking forward to this card. I have taped the majority of this fight. I'll let you guys know if I do need to look into something a little bit more, but I do have 3 bets thus far. We're going to talk some overs. We're going to talk some unders. The violence bets have been on fire lately. And since we've been doing Stat Diggers, like this show, not only hopefully it helps you guys out, it helps me out quite a bit. There are some spots that like I may have not seen without the show. Like, for example, Sergey Morozov last week, we talked about it. We talked about Taha getting taken down, getting control. And then we take a look at Sergey Morozov. He goes for takedowns. He can control his opponents. And Morozov was a plus 141 dog. And he looked like a minus 300 favorite. So hopefully the show's helping you guys a lot, as it is helping me out. I'm assuming it is helping Uncle Weezy out as well. And it's hard work getting stuff out on a Sunday for sure. I know Weezy works very hard to put all of this together on a Sunday. So if you guys could leave a like, that would help out a ton. It is a lot of hard work, but it's 100% worth it. I love getting stuff done early. Beating a ton of live movement. It's always good to see. So I really do appreciate everybody hanging out. Brady, Weezy, you guys helped me multiply my bankroll by 2.2 now. There you go. I can make bigger bets. Thanks a lot. There you go. Riff Raff in the car. Great card. Let's do this. I agree. Yes, let's carry some momentum going into next week. And there is still some beef going on in the chat. So hopefully you guys calm down a little bit. All right. So I say we get into it. And we're going to start with the first fight of the night. And yeah, ugly fight. Ugly fight. Diana Belbita going against Hannah Goldie. So Belbita, she is 25 years old, 5'7", 68-inch reach. Hannah Goldie, 29 years old, 5'4", 61-inch reach. So I think the most important thing to point out here is that Belbita is going to have a 7-inch reach advantage. And I looked into this fight a little bit. I still need to do a little bit more tape study. Goldie has 6 fights on her in her career. I was only able to watch like 3 or 4 of those. And from what I saw, like the opponent she's been fighting, they, of course, had a reach advantage over her as well. I think she fought Jillian Robertson, had like a 63-inch reach. She fought somebody else in the Contender Series who had like a 63-inch reach. But no, Belbita's going to have a 68-inch reach here, which is very, very important to note. So we'll take a look at the last couple of fights between the two fighters. Belbita has been 3-2 in her last couple fights. She lost to Molly McCann, and she lost to Lawana Jojua by submission. I remember that fight. I believe it was like one of the only people on Jojo in that fight, based off the fact that Belbita, when she loses, she gets submitted. She's been submitted a ton of times. I'm sure we're going to talk about that. And in this fight in particular, I don't really think she's going to have to worry about the submission. But as far as Hannah Goldie, she did win her Contender Series fight and then comes in there and then loses a fight against Miranda Granger by decision. So she is 4-1 in her last 5 fights. So Uncle Weezy, not much in terms of the stats here, but what do you have so far?
Yeah, I mean, only 2 UFC fights for both of these ladies. But, there are definitely some advantages here for Belbita. You touched on the 7-inch reach advantage. That is nothing to sneeze at. That's a big deal. And then we're also looking at pro experience here. Hannah Goldie, only 6 fights, while Diana Belbita has 19. So, more than 3 times as many fights for Belbita, about 50 more minutes of cage time for Belbita. She's also a finisher. Belbita's fights are 7.03 minutes long on average, while for Goldie in her 6-fight career, it's just under 15. So, Goldie is not much of a finisher. Both of these ladies have 2 UFC fights. Belbita 0-2, Goldie 1-1. But Belbita's the better finisher here. If we look at Diana Belbita's 13 wins, she's got 46% of her wins have come by knockout, 31% by sub for a 77% finish rate. But for Goldie, 5 professional wins, only 1 of them have come inside the distance. So Goldie's not much of a finisher. That win did come by knockout. She has no submission wins to her credit. And now if we look at how Diana Belbita loses fights, there are 6 losses in her career. 2/3 of them have come by submission. So 4 of her 6 losses have come inside the distance as a result of subs. But the problem is that Hannah Goldie doesn't have any submission victories. So maybe what the biggest hole in Belbita's fight game is her defensive submission game, but it doesn't look like Goldie has much in terms of submissions. If we look at the striking numbers, we see a lot of volume for both of these girls. 14.73 strikes attempted per minute by Belbita and 14.03 attempted by Goldie. We see that Goldie is the more accurate striker at 46% as opposed to about 39. So about 7% more accurate. Neither of these girls have ever been knocked down. But if we look at the ratios here, Diana Belbita lands 5.81 and absorbs 6.49. So she's getting hit more than she's hitting her opponent. While for Goldie is landing 6.53 and only absorbing 3.9. So that's a fantastic, significant strike difference and ratio. So we see that Goldie a little bit more efficient defensively, 55% compared to 52. So definitely showing in the small sample size that we have some better striking numbers here. If we look at the grappling, Hannah Goldie has never attempted a takedown, and that makes sense because she's never gotten a submission, and that's pre-UFC as well. So it looks like Goldie, if we look at her control time numbers, 5% for, less than 1% against. That means over 96% of Goldie's fights are taking her the cage. That's where she wants it. But the problem is that Belbita's got a 7-inch reach advantage. So I don't see Goldie going to her wrestling because she hasn't attempted any takedowns. She doesn't have any victories by submission. So if this does stay a striking match in the center of the cage, while Goldie is a little more efficient striking-wise and has a little bit more volume and is getting hit less than she's hitting her opponents, all those are good little advantages for Goldie, but we're going to have to see how she deals with the 7-inch reach advantage of Belbita, how she deals with the almost 3 times as much cage experience that Belbita has in comparison to Goldie. So I guess if you're looking at who's got the advantages here, if you're looking at Hannah Goldie, you're saying that she's out-voluming and out-striking her opponents by a significant margin. You're saying that she's got great significant strike for and against ratios, and she's better defensively striking-wise. But if you're looking on the Belbita side, we're looking at a 3-inch height advantage, a 7-inch reach advantage, 13 more professional fights, 50 more minutes of cage time, and a much better finisher, 77% finish rate for Belbita, 20% for Goldie, and she's also a more active wrestler. She's attempting 1.5 takedowns per fight, getting a takedown per fight, as opposed to Goldie, who's not doing any of those things. A lot of Belbita's wins did come on the Romanian regional scene. There were a lot of cans on that scene. So that is something that may not, her wins are probably not quite as good as Goldie's prior to the UFC. But yeah, this is one I'm kind of leaning Belbita here. Those measurable advantages, the more experience, the better finishing. I think Goldie's only advantage is just being a little bit more of an efficient striker, but I'm kind of looking at this one as favoring Belbita slightly, but both of these girls have been away from the cage for a minute too. So I'm interested to see what you're thinking. I mean, I know you've looked at a little bit of tape on these girls. I have not yet, but these numbers are kind of telling us that this could be an interesting stylistic matchup. What are you looking at here?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a live dog on our hands. A very ugly fight here, but yeah, I just don't really get this line at all. And I mentioned the reach advantage of 7 inches. That's huge. She actually fought Miranda Granger, and she as well had a 68% reach advantage, or 68-inch reach advantage. And it really struggled to see Goldie. And like Goldie in general, like she really looks like she struggles to get on the inside. She'll rush in, she'll throw combos, but with a reach disadvantage that big, I do think Belbita could give her some problems. But the problem is, and you shortly brought it up, some of the competition for Belbita is just laughable. Listen to some of her wins. 0-1 fighter, 0-0 fighter she won, a 1-0 fighter she beat, 0-3, 3-0. She lost to an 0, or she beat an 0-4. She beat an 0-2. She beat a 4-1. She beat an 0-2. She beat an 0-0, an 0-0, an 0-0, a 1-2, and then she gets into the UFC. She gets into the UFC after beating 3 0-0 fighters and then a 1-2 fighter. So for me, like, that's very concerning. But as far as like value, I do think there's quite a bit of value on the Belbita side, as ugly as it is. We'll take a look at the line. We do see Hannah Goldie opening up -185. That line's already came down quite a bit, now to -150. Belbita did open up to +160, currently +130. And honestly, I think she has more ways to win. She has actually gotten 2 takedowns in both of her UFC fights. I think if she can get a takedown in this fight, I think she could have some success. And then on the feet, if it is at range, that reach advantage is a ton. I think it's a huge factor, something to definitely mention. And I was watching tape on Belbita, and I was watching one of her fights. I think it was against Ariana Lipski, and the announcers were talking about she has some type of background. I forget what background it was. I want to say maybe like a kickboxing background, like a Muay Thai background, but I guess she has some type of background, which is nice to see. I got to look into that a little bit more. Got to tape it up a little bit more, especially on the Belbita side. But early lean for me is going to be the dog. As far as like the over unders, of course, the over 2.5 is juiced to -285. The under 2.5 is +225. Do you have any preference on the over under? I'd probably lean over myself.
Yeah, I'd probably go over here too, because Hannah Goldie's in this fight, and Hannah Goldie really not being a finisher. But then again, even though Belbita's finishing numbers are pretty good, so almost 75% for a female strawweight, it's pretty good. But those are against a lot of 0-0 fighters, like you had just mentioned. So yeah, the 1-800 gambler should be up there. This is not a fight that I'm going to be gambling on. I think the value is on Belbita here, but I don't have that much of a problem that I need to bet this. I think there are going to be some better spots on this card. But yeah, the pick for me for now is going to be Belbita with very low confidence. I think we should just move on to the next one here, because this one's a little more interesting.
Yeah, I definitely want to see where that line goes. On Bet Online, it's minus or +130 for Belbita. On Bet MGM, it's actually +160. So I'm kind of curious to see where FanDuel opens it. But yeah, I think the best move is to probably pass here. But first lean for me is definitely going to be the dog. I do want to pull up. We got a dono. The chat is moving. I almost missed it. Mystic Sosa, appreciate that. Join DFS by the Numbers Discord. Jack's a cash. Oh, taking shots at Jack. Yeah, they've been going at it. Yeah, appreciate the dono. Sosa, you're the man. You and Jack are definitely going at it. But yeah, hopefully you guys work it out and everybody's good there. About 71 here. If you guys can hit the like, that'd be much appreciated. Let's get those likes up. As always, you guys have been killing it with the likes. We've been getting close to 100 likes by the time we get out of here. I think our best was like 98 actually. So maybe get 100 likes for this card. That'd be sweet. All right, so we will take that off. We'll take off the banner and we'll move on to the next fight. So next we have a very interesting fight, to say the least. Yara Eubanks going against Lisa Reed, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Eubanks, 36 years old, 5'4", 67-inch reach. Going against Reed, 28 years old, 5'3", 61.5-inch reach. So again, we have a fighter with a pretty sizable reach advantage, 5.5 reach advantage for Eubanks. And some very important things we have to point out in this fight. There are some red flags for sure. Eubanks, the first red flag is she is 36 years old. Pretty big red flag. And we'll get into, the length of the pro career and all that. But her length of her pro career is only 6 years and 2 months. So she kind of got into MMA very late, around probably 30 years old. So something to note there. But regardless, she is 36. That's not a good look. And the other red flag for this fight is Eubanks is actually coming down a weight class, going from 135 to 125. When I saw that, I was like, man, what the heck? She's somebody that struggles to make weight at 135. What is she doing coming down to 125, and especially at 36 years old? So those things are very, very important to point out here. So we'll take a look at the last couple fights here. Reed, she is 4-0. She has 4 wins, hasn't been on the Contender Series, hasn't been in the UFC. This is her UFC debut. And as far as Eubanks, her last 5 fights, she is 2-3, lost to Betch Correa in a fight where she almost got that finish, I believe, in that first round, ended up gassing out. She did beat Sarah Moras. She beat Julia Avila, very good win there. And then she did lose to Caitlin Vieira and Pani Kienzad. A very, very intriguing fight. I can't wait to talk about it more. Of a lot of things to say about this fight. But first, Uncle Weezy, did anything really stick out to you? And at least in terms of the stats on the Eubanks side, I know we have nothing on Reed here.
Yeah, there's, Eubanks has got a 12-fight career, and 2/3 of that career has been in the UFC. So she's been fighting at a very high level for a very, a long time. That 6-year career prior to her being in the UFC, remember, she was on The Ultimate Fighter as well. So, really, I think since fight 1 for Sijara, she's been fighting really good competition. I'm kind of just going to her Tapology profile. And, I mean, ever since day 1, her second fight professionally in CFFC was against Caitlin Chukagian. Her 4th fight was against Aspen Ladd. And her first UFC fight was against Lauren Murphy. So she's been fighting at the highest level of 125 since she walked in, then went up to 135. She's had 6 consecutive fights at 135 pounds. It hasn't been since the Roxanne Modafferi fight, where she fought at 125 pounds. That Modafferi fight was November 3rd, 2018. So we're looking at about over 2.5 years since she's fought at 125 pounds. And like you mentioned, Brady, she is now 36 years old. So experience, huge advantage here for Eubanks. We got 160 minutes of cage time for Eubanks, only 55 for Reed. Reed only has 4 professional fights. But she came right into CFFC and has been fighting very well. She's undefeated. She's 4-0, and she is a champion. She is the flyweight champion for CFFC. So, but 0 UFC fights yet, up against 8 for Eubanks. Eubanks is 4-4, 120 minutes of cage time. One thing to note about Eubanks in the UFC, 8 fights, 8 unanimous decisions. She's never finished anybody in the UFC. The Contender Series is different. I think she had a couple. On The Ultimate Fighter, I think she had a couple of finishes. But if we look at the finish numbers, Eubanks, 4 wins by KO. So all of her wins prior to coming to the UFC were by knockout. But then there haven't been any since. And Elise Reed has finished 2 of her 4 wins by knockout. If we just look at the striking statistics here for Eubanks, 4.52 landed out of 10.43 offered, about 43%. A 0.18% knockdown per total significant strikes landed. So those are pretty good numbers. Good volume, good amount of strikes landed. Almost a 1 significant strike difference from what she lands to what she absorbs. And she almost throws 2 more significant strikes per minute than her opponents do. So she's out-voluming her opponents. She's out-landing her opponents. And she's actually got just a little bit better accuracy than her opponents do, as her accuracy is 43.29% and her opponent's accuracy is 42.76%. So a little bit more accurate than her opponents. She's never been knocked down either. The one thing that we're looking at for this matchup, Sijara Eubanks is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Elise Reed is either a white belt or she doesn't even own a gi. So we've got a big grappling deficiency in this fight, okay? So Sijara Eubanks, 15 takedowns out of 32 attempts. So in 8 fights, 32 attempts, that's easy math. 4 takedown attempts per fight. 46.88% takedown percentage. Excellent takedown percentage. 1.88 takedowns per 15 minutes. So Eubanks gets it done with her offensive grappling. Not only that, she is out controlling her opponents at a 31.1% to 14.76% clip. Now, this kind of spells some trouble for Elise, because we're seeing over the 8-fight sample size that we have for Eubanks, a 46% control time. That's not good, because if this fight takes place in control time positions for about half the fight, Elise Reed being a white belt and Eubanks being a black belt, having all that experience advantage, it really is shaping up for a very good matchup for Sijara Eubanks. We see why this line is moving. Defensively on the grappling side, 65% takedown defense for Eubanks, 0.88 takedowns allowed per 15 minutes, only 14.76% control time allowed. And if we look at the strength of schedule, a 1.3 ratio, and so a winning record for Sijara Eubanks' opponents, 3.88 and 3. And the losing fights that she has, the average UFC record of a woman that beats Sijara Eubanks is 4.25 and 3.25 for a 1.31 ratio. So while we see some names on Sijara's resume, like next title challenger Lauren Murphy, journeywoman Roxanne Modafferi, Aspen Ladd, who's fighting on this card, who's very tough, Betch Correa, Julia Avila, Ketlin Vieira, Pani Kianzad, who's on a 4-fight win streak. Big time level of competition advantage here for Sijara Eubanks, okay? We've got a 5.5-inch reach advantage for Sijara Eubanks. We got 8 more pro fights. We have 8 more UFC fights. We have 5 more years as a pro, over 100 more minutes of cage time. She's a black belt, while Reed is a white belt. She's attempting 4 takedowns per fight, so she's probably going to get this to the grappling. She's got a 47% takedown accuracy, 1.88 takedowns per 15 minutes, 31% control time, great striking ratios, 0.8 significant strike difference, 1.23 significant strike ratio, never been knocked down or finished. I'm still talking about Eubanks. 1.29 strength to schedule ratio, fought much better competition than Reed. Plus, Reed is making her debut. Reed advantages, she's 8 years younger. And that's all that I can come up with for the advantage for Reed. So, yeah, man, this is going to be a really tough row to hoe for Elise Reed. This is one very difficult debut to make. It might be too much too soon for Elise Reed. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I love Eubanks in this fight, man. I mean, even after you went after all those stats, man, this makes me feel so much better about it. Yeah, I was watching tape on Reed, and she kind of looks small for the weight class. I mean, Eubanks is going to be huge, man. She's cutting down from 135, somebody that struggles to make weight at 135. And, I think there's a good chance that Eubanks does miss weight, but even then, it probably would be an advantage to her if she does miss weight. She has that extra pound advantage. I can't see a scenario where she does miss weight because she struggles with that 35. But something to note is she was actually scheduled to fight Priscilla Ketchadub a couple months ago at 125. So she was already transitioning, going down to 125, trying to, go down to that weight class. And I was checking out her Instagram. She looks to be in good shape. So I'm curious to see if she does miss or make weight. Honestly, I'm leaning towards miss, but hey, you never know. But as far as the fight goes, Reed, she's tough. She's, she comes forward. She throws a lot of volume, but man, she is very, very hittable. The reach disadvantage is not good, 5.5 inches, and she has no takedown defense. And I think that's huge here. And you also mentioned it. I went on Instagram checking out Reed, and I saw that she just got her white belt a couple of years ago. And I thought to myself, man, Eubanks is a black belt. I usually don't get all into who's the white belt, the brown belt, black belt, because it's MMA. It doesn't really matter for the most part because we have seen black belts get submitted, all that good stuff. But man, that's such a huge difference. A black belt in Eubanks, who's very experienced, who's fought great competition, going against a 4-fight fighter in Reed, who's fought not great competition and a white belt. And I think on the feed, it's Eubanks for me all day. I think she, Reed's very hittable. She's very hittable. She's tough. She can take the shots, but she's very hittable, and you do not want to be hittable against Eubanks. I think Eubanks is a better striker. I think Eubanks has, the better wrestling, better grappling by a mile. And I think for Eubanks, her path to least resistance is going to be getting this fight down to the mat. And I know you said Eubanks has not finished a fight in the UFC, but if she's going to finish a fight, it's going to be this one. She's going to be much bigger, much more experienced, the much better grappler, the much better striker. I really think that Eubanks should be a very, very big favorite. And the only reason I see she's not is probably those question marks we mentioned earlier. 36 years old, that's a huge question mark. Coming down a weight class to 125, that's a huge question mark. But outside of that, those are my only worries. I think Eubanks does roll here. And we'll take a look at the odds, and we do see a lot of money coming in on Eubanks. People probably started taping Reed and saying she can be taken down and controlled on the mat. And Eubanks opened up as a minus 225 favorite, currently minus 330. And honestly, I expect that line to get wider and wider and wider and wider as the week goes on. I mean, Reed, her path to victory is Eubanks beating herself, Eubanks gassing out. And could it happen? It could, but worst case scenario, and I said it for Lemos last week, worst case scenario is Eubanks does, win the first round. She wins the second, she gets a takedown, and then she gasses out and she loses the third. What I also like about Eubanks is she's never been finished. She's very tough, very durable. So even if Eubanks does gas out in that third round again, worst case scenario, I don't know if Reed has the power or what it takes to finish Eubanks here. So yeah, I'm all over Eubanks here. One of my favorite plays on the card. I know it's very scary laying this price on a women's MMA fight. I did it last week with Lemos, and I'm going to do it again. I like Eubanks here. As far as the over-under, we have the under 2.5 rounds and actually open up at plus 210, and some money is coming in on that, and for a very good reason. It's now plus 185. In terms of the over-under, which way are you leaning? I'm kind of leaning towards the under. I think Eubanks can finish here.
Yeah, the under would be an interesting bet here because, first of all, Sijara's never finished a UFC fight, and she's never been finished. So 8 of her fights have all went the distance. However, with her coming down a weight class, we could see a really bad weight cut. Potentially, she might feel like she has to get her out of there in the first round because she doesn't have 3 rounds of gas. So it could work both ways. You can not only get that under probably fairly, with some decent amount of it wouldn't be too juiced because Sijara is not finishing fights in the UFC. So, yeah, that could be a really good one. Like I say, Sijara is really, really overmatching Reed here pretty much everywhere. So I could definitely see her finishing this fight, and it might be something you get some decent value on because we haven't seen it yet. But the one thing that we haven't seen in any Sijara-Eubanks fight thus far besides a finish is this big of a skill discrepancy. This big of a talent discrepancy and experience discrepancy. That's what's really worrying me here on the Reed side. So, yeah, I like Sijara quite a bit here, and I think the under could be a really cheeky bet.
Yeah, I don't hate it. And like I said, I think that line's going to get very, very, very wide here, and for a very good reason. All right, so, yeah, but I think, I'd say wait till the weigh-ins, but the line's moving, man. So, if you're unsure about it, maybe wait for the weigh-in, see how Ciara looks. My guess is she misses weight, but I hope she proves me wrong. I hope she looks good, but man, it's going to be a tough ask for her to make weight. She's huge for even 135. So we'll get to the next fight. Should be a very fun fight. The return of Julio Arce going against Andre Ewell. Julio Arce is 31 years old, 5'7", 70-inch reach. Going against Ewell, 33 years old, 5'8", 75-inch reach. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage. Taking a look at the last couple of fights, Arce is 3-2. A win over Dan Ige, a submission win over Daniel Tamor, a submission or a decision loss to Shaman Marias, a knockout win over Juliana Rosa, and then a split decision loss over Hakeem Dawadu. And as far as Andre Ewell, he did lose to Chris Gutierrez in his last fight. He won a split decision over Erwin Rivera, and in my opinion, I don't see how that was a split. He did have a split decision win over Jonathan Martinez, a knockout loss against Marlon Vera, and then a decision win over Anderson Dos Santos, 3-2 in his last 5 fights as well. So I did not tape this one yet. I'll be taping it tonight, but just on paper, I think it's going to be a pretty exciting fight. We've not seen Julio Arce in some time, and I'm very excited for the return of him, but it should be a good fight. So Uncle Weezy, curious to get in the stats on this one.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one, man. We haven't seen Julio Arce. Let me get that information for you right here. Hakeem Dawodu, that loss by split decision was November of 2019. So almost 2 years now where we haven't seen this guy. But his numbers are super impressive in the UFC. 6 fights. He's 4-2, but his only 2 losses have come by split decision, both of them. So even, he could be 6-0. He's been in some very close fights, and the fights that he's winning are usually finishing, and the fights that he's losing are going to split decision. So Arce's looking pretty good here. But let's start by talking about Andre Ewell. First of all, this is a southpaw versus southpaw matchup. That's interesting. Always an interesting stylistic matchup, because usually southpaws aren't used to fighting other southpaws. So I think whoever is more diverse striker here is probably going to have a little bit of an advantage, because that is an interesting stylistic matchup. Andre Ewell boasting a 5-inch reach advantage here, which is very interesting. Now, Ewell's the older guy at 33 years old. Arce is 31. But Ewell, 4 more fights, 17-7 record for Ewell, 16-4 for Arce. A little more cage time for Arce. His fights, Arce, are about 3.5 minutes longer. Andre Ewell's pro career at 33 years of age is only about 6 years long, though. So this is a guy who got started kind of late. In his late 20s is when he started as a pro, while Julio Arce has been fighting professionally for 9 years, and he's 31. So he got a much earlier start. And we see that Andre Ewell, though, has been very busy. In his 6 years, he does have 24 fights. So Andre Ewell, definitely the busier fighter. One more fight in the UFC for Ewell. 4-3 record for Ewell, 4-2 for Arce. We see that Andre Ewell about 25 more minutes of cage time and a little bit longer average fight time. So Andre Ewell has never finished a UFC win, while Arce has finished 75% of his UFC wins. The overall finish rate for Arce is 56%, and the overall finish rate for Ewell is 65%. So very close there. But if we look at how they get finished, Andre Ewell has had 7 losses. 3 of them are by sub, 1 of them are by knockout. So more than half of the time he loses inside the distance. While Arce, in his 4 professional losses, has only been stopped once, and that was by submission. Getting into the striking stats, we see that Arce is landing 4.25 out of 11.68 for a 36.39% striking accuracy, while Ewell throwing just a little bit less volume, but a lot more accurate. So he's landing 4.42 out of 10.55 for a 42% accuracy. So almost 6% more accurate. In terms of how much power they're showing, 0.3% for Arce and 0.22% for knockdowns per total significant strikes landed. So neither one of these guys showing a ton of power. 0.19 knockdowns per 15 minutes for Arce, 0.15 for Ewell. In terms of how they fight defensively, Julio Arce, very, very, very impressive on the defensive side. He's landing 4.25 significant strikes per minute, but only absorbing 2.87. So about a 1.4 significant strike difference, and a really good ratio. 67.5% striking defense is incredibly legit. However, Arce has been knocked down on 0.9% of the significant strikes landed against him. So he is getting knocked down almost a half time per 15 minutes, while for Ewell, it's only about 0.3. And Ewell is showing a 53% striking defense. So Arce is a little bit better defensively. Ewell is a little more efficient offensively when it comes to striking. If we look at how much these guys are grappling, Ewell only 3 takedown attempts in 7 fights. He has gotten 2 of them. And Arce 10 takedown attempts in 6 fights, and he's gotten 3 of them. So Arce only a 30% takedown accuracy. He's getting only 0.58 takedowns per 15 minutes. Excuse me here. And only 9.56% control time. And for Ewell, it's even less, only 4% control time. So neither one of these guys particularly active on the offensive wrestling side, but Arce is a little more active than Ewell is. And if we look at their takedown defense, Andre Ewell, a 71% takedown defense. He has successfully defended 22 of 31 takedowns against, while Julio Arce has a 93.75% takedown defense. Now, that's a really good thing, but with a guy like Ewell, who has only attempted 3 takedowns in 7 fights, he probably won't have to take down to stop a lot of takedowns here. But if he does have to, we can show that he's got 94% takedown defense. So Julio Arce is probably the one that's going to be more likely to go to the offensive wrestling and more likely to complete a takedown here. Andre Ewell has 4% control time, but he has 21% control time against. So this is definitely a good path to victory over Andre Ewell, is to use your wrestling and to try to control him a good amount of the fight, because he's getting controlled more than 5 times more than what his opponents are controlling him. So definitely there could be a path to victory to Arce if he chooses to go to his defense or his offensive wrestling here, if he doesn't like how it's going on the feet. But both of these guys are pretty active and pretty good strikers, so this could be an interesting matchup. If we look at the strength of schedule numbers, my metric is showing that Ewell has fought better competition with a 1.58 ratio and 7 total fights, as compared to only a 1.29 ratio and 5.33 total fights for Arce. The wins are very similar, but Ewell's win is just a little bit better according to my metric, and Ewell's loss is also a little bit better according to my metric than Ewell. And if you look at the Ewell side, Chris Gutierrez, Erwin Rivera, Jonathan Martinez, Marlon Vera, Anderson Dos Santos. But on the other side, Arce, Hakeem Dawodu, a very good fighter. Julian Erosa, he's got a win over. He lost split decision to Shaman, and then a win over the Bad Tamer. And then his signature win is definitely Dan Ige. So that is the best win for him. Andre Ewell probably doesn't have as good of a win as Ige on his career. But we also have to keep in mind here that, this is a little bit of a layoff here for Arce. He's only 31 years old, but he's been away from the cage for about 2 years. I don't know how much of that is injury related, but this is going to be a very interesting matchup. I see this as being a striking matchup taking place in the center of the cage. And if that happens, I see Ewell having a great chance of pulling this one out. However, I could see Arce going to that wrestling. He attempts almost 2 takedowns per fight. And if he does that and he's able to control his opponents, like Ewell's past opponents have been able to control him at 21%, I could see him winning 2 or 3 rounds and getting the decision here. But this is a pretty close, pretty difficult fight to call. You seen anything in these numbers that's leading you one way or another here?
Yeah, at least on paper, it does look like a close fight, but I kind of lead Arce first look. I still got to do a lot of tape, but I kind of thought, Arce does have a path to victory with the wrestling, but you take a look at it, only 10 takedown attempts, 3 successful. I don't really like that. Ewell has been submitted 3 times as well, so that could be a path to victory, but we haven't really seen Arce go to that takedown option much. Do have a dono, though. Jack Attack MMA. My son, Mystic Sosa, wasted 2.99 weekly allowance donating here. If a takedown is expected, does that make it a fluke? Mystic Jack, Mystic Sosa. Appreciate the dono. Jack Attack, Jack and Sosa going at it nonstop. I agree. Y'all two are wilding, but really do appreciate the dono. Appreciate that, man. But we'll take a look at the odds here. And, like I said, it looks like a close fight on paper, slightly leaning Arce first look. But we do see that Arce is a pretty big favorite. Open at -180, currently -190. Ewell opening up +155, currently +165. So Arce about close to -200 favorite here. We'll take a look at the over-under. I'd personally lean an over, but of course it is juiced to the max. The over -245, the under +195. Any preference on the over-under, Weezy?
Yeah, that's I don't really see going one way or another, but let's keep in mind that Julio Arce has finished 3 of his 4 UFC wins, and Andre Ewell has been finished in 2 of his 3 UFC losses. So if you see Arce winning this fight, he could potentially get a finish. And if that over is incredibly juiced, the numbers are telling me that there is a chance, if you like Arce, that you might also like the under here. Hey, 75% finish rate in his UFC wins and a 66% finish rate in Ewell's UFC losses, that sometimes tells me that it might go under. So could be some value on that under there.
I like it. Good point. Yeah. First look for me is Arce. Still got to tape that one up. But, definitely something to monitor there. All right, so this is one I did look into it, and my goodness, I mean, it very well could be fight of the night. At least it's my pick for fight of the night. Adrian Yanez going against Randy Costa. Man, they should have put this on the main card. I mean, this fight's awesome. You have Yanez, who is 27 years old, 5'7", 70-inch reach, going against Randy Costa, 27 years old, 5'9", 73-inch reach. So Costa is going to have a 3-inch reach advantage and also a 2-inch height advantage as well. Take a look at their last couple fights. Yanez did knock out Michael Rodriguez. He has a win over Estrada. He knocked out Brady, knocked out Victor, and knocked out Gustavo Lopez in his last fight. 5-0 in his last 5 fights. And you take a look at Randy Costa, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He came in to the UFC, I believe it was UFC debut against Brandon Davis, lost by submission, and then knocked out Boston Solomon, and then knocked out Journey Newsome recently as well. So yeah, very good fight here. This is one that I did tape. I need to do a little bit more tape on it, but I do have a pretty strong lean here. I can't wait to get into it, but the cage times or average cage times are really going to be interesting here. I think this is a good opportunity for a violent spot. But yeah, what do we have here for the stats, Uncle Weezy?
Yeah, we should just take down this screen and just put violence up there, just a big flashing violence, because, I mean, Yanez and Costa, man, oh my God. I mean, that would be so cool. This is such a great fight. This is probably the people's main event, so let's just really kind of get into everything here. Costa, 3-inch reach advantage. Costa, both of these guys are young, 27 years old, so they're both on their way up. They're both super hot prospects. And we got a switch fighter in Costa, an orthodox fighter in Yanez. Randy Costa has been fighting at Sanford lately. That's always a great camp to see people training out of. We got about twice as much pro experience for Costa for Yanez in terms of fights. 16 for Yanez, 7 for Costa. So this is so badass. I mean, like, you never get to see stats like this. Randy Costa, 7 fights, and he has 12 minutes of cage time.
Crazy.
That is less than 2 minutes per fight. I mean, how do you do that? You know, that is a 1.71 minute average fight time. Are you absolutely kidding me? I mean, this guy, I'd say he fights like he's double parked, but I mean, he's not. I mean, he's like triple parked. He's parked in the middle of an expressway, runs into the arena, knocks a guy out in 6 seconds, runs back out to his car, and then lets everybody go, because this guy fights fast. Only a 3-year career for Costa, though. So this is a big-time experience advantage here for Yanez, as we've got 16 pro fights for Yanez, 7 for Costa, but the cage time, 145 minutes in the cage for Adrian Yanez, and only 12 minutes, So that's over 130 minutes of professional experience Yanez has on this guy. So both of them 3 UFC fights. Yanez 3-0. Costa 2-1. The cage time 13.87. So less than a round of average fight time for both of these guys in the UFC. We got 100% finish rate in Yanez's wins in the UFC, 100% finish rate in Costa's wins in the UFC, and 100% finish rate for Costa's only loss in the UFC. So 6 total fights for both of these guys in the UFC. None of these fights have seen the scorecards yet. Yanez, 3 wins, 3 knockouts. Costa, 2 wins, 2 knockouts. Both of these guys throw serious power, and they knock their opponents out. Yanez has never been finished, though, in his 3 professional losses. And in Costa's 1 loss, he has been submitted. We look at the striking numbers. My God, I mean, like, knockdowns per 15 minutes. Now, I know it's a small sample size, but 4.33 knockdowns per 15 minutes for Yanez. 4.93 knockdowns per 15 minutes for Costa. I mean, like, they must be letting these dudes put a roll of nickels in each hand before they put on their gloves, because, like, they are absolutely knocking dudes unconscious. And you look at the percentages. Yanez is landing a knockdown in over 6% of the significant strikes that he lands. That's like 4 times more than Conor McGregor and Darrick Lewis and even guys like Ngannou. And then we look at the same thing for Costa. Over 4% of his significant strikes that land winds up with his opponents on his ass. Neither one of these guys has ever even been knocked down. Both of these guys have a striking defense. It's over 55%. Both of these guys are landing at least 2 more significant strikes per minute than their opponents land. They're both throwing more volume. I mean, shit. Adrian Yanez attempts 10.6 significant strikes a minute, and his opponents only attempt 5.19. So he's actually doubling the volume of his opponents. He's doubling the amount of significant strikes that his opponents land. If we take 2.31, we multiply that by 2, we get 4.62. He's landing 4.69. Everything in these numbers is just explosive. It's somebody's getting knocked out here. This is going to be a great fight. And then not only that, you look at the grappling stats. None of these guys even give a fuck about grappling. 0 takedown attempts for Yanez. 0 takedown attempts for Costa. Less than 1% of control time for Yanez. Less than 10% of control time for Costa. Costa's never been taken down. 100% takedown defense, 0 for 1. Yanez has never been taken down. 100% takedown defense, 0 for 5. So stand in the front of the cage, put a roll of nickels in each hand, and just swing until somebody goes to the hospital. That's what this fight is. We haven't seen either of these guys get a signature win, though, in the UFC. If we look at the strength of schedule, we got a 0.5 ratio for Yanez, and we got a 0.43 ratio for Randy Costa. Neither one of these guys is fighting winning fighters or has a win over anybody that will be considered even middle of the division. Journey Newson and Boston Salmon are not signature wins for Costa, and Gustavo Lopez, Victor Rodriguez, and Brady Quang are not signature wins for Adrian Yanez. So Yanez has got the experience advantage. Both of these guys have dynamite striking, but neither one of these guys has beaten somebody that we can kind of say that one of them should have a massive advantage over the other. I can't wait for this fight. This is going to be so great. This is the people's main event. Tell me you're as excited for this one as I am, dude.
Man, I love this fight. And if you listen to the interview of Randy Costa, he loves the fight. He said he's excited for the fight from a fan's perspective. So he's actually looking forward to the fight just as much as the fans are. I thought that was very interesting. But some things I do want to pull up. You take a look at Randy Costa. I mean, the guy is a very interesting, prospect here, because you take a look at what he's done on the regional scene. Listen to some of his wins. I mean, he starts off his career of beating an 0-4 opponent. After that, he beats an 0-0 opponent. Remind you, 46 seconds in the first round for the first one, 11 seconds in the first round of the second one. He beats a 5-9 opponent in the first round, of course, with 1 minute into the fight. He beats an 0-1 opponent, Rob Fuller, of course, in the first minute of the fight, 42 seconds. And then he gets into the UFC after beating an 0-1 opponent in Rob Fuller, takes on Brandon Davis. And I went back and watched this fight, and it was an absolute war for as long as it lasted. But we saw Costa was not able to get the knockout. And when it went to the second round, he was exhausted. He was so tired because he's used to knocking out guys in a minute or less. So got into that second round, and then I believe he got hurt bad. And then Davis didn't even take his back, got no hooks in, just choked him out. And I went into tape thinking, hey, if Adrian Yanez goes in here, supposedly Yanez is actually a black belt that we have not really get to see at all in the UFC and not much on the regional scene. I went back and watched. I went through every single Yanez fight I could, and I saw him shoot like 0 takedowns, 0, maybe 1 takedown in all the fights I saw. So that says to me that he really doesn't want to go to that grappling. When he is getting submissions, it is off his back. So I think the path to least resistance would be testing the ground game of Costa, but that's not something that Yanez wants to do. So I do think they'll stand and bang until one man falls. And at that point, personally, rather than betting a side here, which I am leaning with Yanez based off the competition, you take a look at Yanez's 3 losses. Miles Johns, he's in the UFC. Domingo Pilarte in the UFC. And Levi Moles is not a bad fighter by any means. So 3 pretty solid losses. And then you take a look at Randy Costa, and he got choked out by Brandon Davis. Just not a good look there. So in terms of skill for skill, I do think Yanez is the better fighter. It's just Costa's very, very dangerous. So I think someone's getting finished. So we'll take a look at the line here. And the line's moving, and I expect it to keep moving throughout the fight week here. Yanez opened at -170. Somebody in the chat mentioned that they were able to get him there. I think, good bet there. He is now minus 210. He is still minus 188 on FanDuel. And honestly, like if Giannis can either knock out Costa early or at least survive that first round, I do think that Randy Costa, with how explosive he is, I think he will slow down. And we have seen Giannis go 5 rounds. We've seen him go into the 3rd round, whereas we have not seen Costa go over that 1.5 round mark. He's never been to the 3rd round. He's never been to decision. And I honestly don't see that changing anytime soon. So they opened up the over-under at 1.5 rounds, which of course is expected, right? They have the under 1.5 at plus 145 and the over 1.5 at minus 175. And believe it or not, the money is coming in on the over. I don't know what it is with people on over 1.5. People love them no matter who's fighting. It could be Ngannou versus Paul Craig, and people will bet these over 1.5. I just don't get it. But yeah, money's coming in on the over 1.5 in this fight. Personally, like I lean strongly towards the under 1.5, or even like the fight does not start round 3. It could be something to look at if you want to be a little bit safer. The alternative under 2.5, even better. So I might be placing one of those. Regardless, I will have a violence bet. I don't know if it will be the alternative under 2.5. Even like the fight doesn't go to decision is only minus 210. I do not have access to that line, but yeah, minus 210. It actually opened up minus 170. I would smash that line so hard, but sadly, I do not have a 5 Dimes account anymore. So Uncle Weezy, in terms of the over-under, in terms of the fight doesn't go where the fight goes, what are you looking for here?
This is why I love this show, because, you look at the stats and, it takes me so long just to get the stats ready for this show. I was up till like 3 a.m. last night because I knew I was going to be driving back to Chicago today and I might not have time to finish it. But like when you go through those stats and you look at, this guy Costa finishing all his fights in 1 minute, and then you see fight doesn't go to decision minus 210. I just wrote down max bet question mark Giannis versus Costa fight doesn't go to decision, because minus 210 for a guy who's never even been past 2 minutes of the second round, and guys who are landing knockdowns on over 5% of the significant strikes that they're landed. Yeah, I had to write that down because that's going to be something I'm going to be refreshing my book, and I'm going to be looking for that fight doesn't go to decision. If I can get that better than minus 250, I might be making my first max bet of the year.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think that, Randy Costa probably has made improvements since then. He probably has worked on that cardio, but again, he fights like an absolute wild man. He has no regards for anything at all besides trying to kill his opponent, and I think that Giannis will definitely be willing to dance with him, and I think someone's going to sleep. Giannis knows it. Costa knows it. He said it himself. He said someone's going to sleep. He said he needs to land that shot before Giannis does. There is going to be no grappling. There's going to be no grappling. I wish there was for Giannis. I probably bet him, but there's going to be no grappling. We're going to stand and bang until one man falls. So we do have some donations in the chat here. Shout out to Jack Attack. Mystic Jack predicts these things. Mystic Sosa can't even shell out the extra penny to make it 10. Shout out to Jack for the dono. I believe we had one more donation here. If I can find it. The chat's really moving. Jack's all talk and no bite. I'll ankle pick him within the first minute. Come see me, Jack. Shout out to Sosa. Shout out to Jack. Going at it. I've never seen this. I've never seen a beef this large in a chat room. But shout out to both of them for the donos. Really do appreciate it. But back to the fight. It's a good fight. It's a good fight. It's a very good fight. So I will pull off this banner. That is a violent spot that I'm really looking at, whether it is the under 1.5, whether it is the alternate under 2.5, or whether it's just the fight doesn't go to decision. I'm thinking violence. I'm thinking violence there. So we'll get to the next fight here. And we have Nasruddin Imavov going against Ian Heinisch. Imavov, he is 26 years old, 6'3", 75-inch reach, going against Heinisch, who is 32 years old, 5'11", 72-inch reach. So Imavov is going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. He's going to have a 4-inch height advantage, and he's also going to be 6 years younger. So we'll take a look at the last couple fights between the two. Imavov comes in and makes his UFC debut against one Jordan Williams, a very fun fight there, and then he loses a decision to Phil Hawes. A very weird fight that a lot of people, including me, expected to finish, but Hawes pretty much held him against the cage for 15 minutes. landed a takedown here or there, but was able to control him for the majority of that fight. And then as far as Heinisch, 2-3 in his last 5 fights. He did have a win over Antonio Carlos Jr., lost to Derek Brunson, lost to Amari Akhmedov. He did knock out Jared Meerschaert. I think that was like in 10 seconds, something crazy like that. And then he just recently lost a decision to Kelvin Gastelum. So what really sticks out to me is huge step down in competition for Ian Heinisch, going from Kelvin Gastelum to Nasruddin Imavov here. And yeah, I'm really curious to get in the stats on this one. I know we have a lot of data on the Heinisch side, not much on the Imavov side, but I do think there's some things we can look at. So Uncle Weezy, what do we have here?
We have a hell of a fight here is what we have, man. A couple of 185-pounders. Dude, Imavov's only 26. And, you know, the thing that I'm seeing here, right, we're seeing Heinisch actually having the worst level of competition according to my metric, but he's fought the way more experienced brand of competition. But I just want to say that Phil Hawes and Jordan Williams, I think, are both a little bit underrated in terms of what they're doing right now as middleweights. But obviously, Heinisch fighting Gastelum, Meerschaert, Akhmedov, Brunson, and Antonio Carlos Jr. in his last 5 fights. Even though the metric is saying it's better, he's fought the way more experienced competition, has Heinisch, as the average record of the guy that he's fighting is 7.29 and 4.29, while the average record of an Imavov opponent is 2-1. Okay? But Imavov is 4 inches taller and has a 3-inch reach advantage, and he's 6 years younger here. So those are some measurables that we don't want to ignore. Also, Ian Heinisch, 18 pro fights, but Imavov already has 12. So we're talking about a 90-minute cage advantage for Heinisch in terms of the experience. But Ian Heinisch's pro career has only been 6 years and 5 months because he spent a lot of time in jail. And he didn't really get back to fighting until he did his time. So, that's why you see a guy at 32 years old only having a 6-year career. While for Imavov, you're talking about a 5-year career, but he's 26. So the guy started much younger. Heinisch has got that high school and college wrestling background. He uses it occasionally, but not as much as you'd like to see. In terms of the finish numbers, Ian Heinisch finishes 50% of his wins inside the distance, 36% by TKO, 14% by sub. And he has finished 2 of his 4 UFC wins inside the distance, both of them by knockout. While for Imavov, 1-1, he hasn't finished a win, and he hasn't been finished in his loss either. So both of his UFC fights have went to decision. In terms of how Imavov wins, he is a good finisher, 44% by sub, 33% by knockout. So that's a 77% finish rate in his 9 wins. And in his 3 losses, he's only been finished once. It was by submission. And in Heinisch's 4 losses, he's only been finished once, also by submission. If we look at the striking numbers, we see in the limited sample size for Imavov some slightly better numbers, as he's landing 4.17 out of 6.77 for a 61.5% striking accuracy, while Heinisch is landing a little bit less and throwing a little bit less, 3.28 out of 6.46 for a 51% striking accuracy. Heinisch showing more power at 0.76% knockdowns per total significant strikes landed, with 0.38 knockdowns per 15 minutes. Imavov in his 2 fights has not landed a knockdown yet. Neither one of these guys has been knocked down. They're both landing more strikes than they absorb. They're both pushing a 60% striking defense. And Imavov in particular is doubling the amount of strikes that he lands twice as many strikes as his opponents do. He's landing 4.17, only absorbing 2.03, while for Heinisch, he's landing 3.28 and only absorbing 2.79. So both of these guys have been really good defensively, and both of these guys have never been knocked down. In terms of the wrestling, Imavov has been active with his takedown attempts. He has attempted 8 takedowns in only 2 fights, so 4 takedown attempts per fight. However, he's only gotten 1 of them, so he's not efficient when he does try to wrestle. Only a 12.5% takedown percentage, only a half takedown per 15 minutes, but he is averaging 2 submission attempts per 15 minutes. So when he does get the takedowns, he is active trying to finish the fights. Here's the problem for Imavov. 16% control time for, 45% control time against. And we saw that in the Hawes fight, where he was having success, but Hawes had a really easy time clinching up with Imavov and holding him up against the cage whenever Imavov started to get his striking going. So if we look at Ian Heinisch, also fairly active with his grappling, as he's averaging more than 4 takedown attempts per fight, but he's only gotten 6 out of 32. His takedown percentage is pretty bad as well at 18.75%. He's getting 1.13 takedowns per 15 minutes. He is averaging submission attempts, but Ian Heinisch is getting 12.5% control time, but he's allowing 28% control time. So both Imavov and Heinisch, while they're wrestling a lot, they're both pretty inefficient with their wrestling, and they're both getting out-controlled by their opponents at least twice as much. We see that the takedown defense for Imavov is only 60%. The takedown defense for Heinisch is only 60%. But Heinisch has had 51 takedowns attempted against him in 7 fights. So he is getting shot on quite a bit. People want to get Heinisch on his back. And so he's giving up 3.76 takedowns per 15 minutes. So yeah, man, this is an interesting fight. Imavov has fought the less experienced competition. Ian Heinisch definitely has a better strength of schedule here. He's fought the more experienced competition. He's beat the more experienced competition. And in terms of the losses, he's also losing to the better, more experienced UFC competition. So I see Heinisch having a better strength of schedule. I see Heinisch being the more experienced mixed martial artist here. Imavov, though, has some nice measurables, being 6 years younger, 4 inches taller, 3-inch reach advantage. He's a diverse finisher at 44% by sub, 33% by knockout. I'd be interested to see where the line is here and if you've done any tape on this and which way you're leaning. But I see this as being a pretty close fight. I think Imavov has seen 2 really tough fights in the UFC yet. I just don't think that those guys are as well respected as the names that Heinisch has fought, but I don't necessarily think that Heinisch's fights have been more difficult. Phil Hawes is going to be a real problem for this division, and Jordan Williams, now that he's moving down to 170, he's going to be a real problem at welterweight. So I'm kind of looking at this as a very close to a 50-50 fight. How are you looking at it?
I like it. Yeah, definitely a lot of good things in there. Before I get into my thoughts here, I do want to shout out some donos. The donos are on fire tonight. Don't ask, don't tell. Thank you so much. $10 dono. Really do appreciate that a bunch. Thanks for hanging out. As always, don't ask. Shout out to you. And then shout out to Dan Goldstein. Dan's always in here for sure. $5 from him. Appreciate that, Dan. You are the man. Always bringing it in the chat. And speaking of the chat is lit up tonight. Thank you all so much for hanging out. 130 in here. If you all can hit the like button, let's try to get 100 by the time we get out of here. The record's 98. The record's 98. Can we beat the record tonight? That'd be awesome. Me and Uncle Weezy put in a ton of work. It's very hard to get everything done on a Sunday. Shout out to Weezy. He puts in a ton of work getting the advanced stats done, the matchup template done, all by Sunday. And then I was up all last night doing tape and then all day today. So it is hard work, but we do it for you guys. We do it for us as well. It helps us out as well. And one small like does go a long way. So appreciate the donos, both of you. Jack Sosa as well. All of you guys appreciate that quite a bit. But as far as, my thoughts on the fight, no, I have not taped this all that much. But I kind of thought, seeing Hawes being able to control Imavov so easily against the cage, being able to take him down 4 times. But then again, Hawes is a monster. And it looks like Hawes now has cardio, which, like you said, Hawes could definitely be a problem. So I kind of thought Heinisch may be able to go the takedown route, but seeing his takedown numbers, man, 18%, that gives me some very serious pause. And at range on the feet, you probably got to favor Imavov. They call him the Russian sniper. This guy hits very hard. He is indeed a sniper, but I do got to tape this one a little bit more. But I'm kind of with you. I kind of think this is a very close fight, at least on paper. I'm looking through the stats, all that first look. I say it's a very close fight. And we take a look at the odds. And we have if I can find it. Yeah, we have Ian Heinisch opening up as a -115, and he's currently -150. So a lot of money coming in on the Heinisch side. And then Imavov opened up -105 and currently +130. So yeah, lots of early action on the Heinisch side. I don't know. I kind of agree with that opener, at least first look, wouldn't you? I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was muted and I just couldn't get my mouse over there. Hard work, dude. Yeah, man. This is like I say, dude, I just feel it's a little bit closer than everybody thinks. I'm really high on Imavov, and Heinisch has fought really tough competition. And man, you know, I'm not Heinisch. This guy has come in and had really tough fights right from the start, from the Contender Series on. He's been very impressive. You know, this is the middle. This is like right in the meaty part of the curve for the middleweight division here. And either one of these guys, I think this is going to be a signature win for each one of these guys. Whoever gets this win is moving up and is going to be looking pretty good. But I got a feeling about Imavov here. I think he's more well-rounded, and I think he's going to land the more impressive strikes here. And since neither one of these guys is showing really good takedown accuracy, I'm going to have to favor who I like on the feet here, and I just think Imavov's going to be a step ahead on the feet.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with that 4-inch height advantage, the 3-inch reach advantage. Yeah, I mean, for sure, and the age as well. So yeah, lots of good things going for Imavov, and we see him as a dog. So I'm definitely I'm gonna tape this tonight. I'm gonna sit back and wait. I'm gonna see where the line goes. But yeah, maybe Imavov can definitely be a potential dog to look at. But I definitely got to tape that one for sure. So we'll get in the next fight. Before we do, we got to shout out another dono, Daz Files. Great work and nice and early. Appreciate that a ton. Thank you for hanging out, Daz. Appreciate the dono, man. That's awesome. Appreciate that. And we have 134 in here. I think that might be a record, Uncle Weezy. 134. Definitely up there. So, yeah, thank you guys for hanging out every Sunday. As always, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Bringing the early content. All right, next we have a very fun fight. Chris Daukaus, somebody that a lot of people are very high on, including me. He's been looking phenomenal lately, going against the return of Shamil Abdul-Rahimov. Shamil is 39 years old, 6'3", 76-inch reach. Daukaus, 31 years old, 6'3", 76-inch reach. So identical reaches, identical heights. The age is something to definitely monitor here. We have not seen Shamil in, I believe, like a little over 2 years, and went back and saw he had some health problems. He was pulling out of fights. Digged into that a little bit, but yeah, he's now 39 years old. Where you have Chris Daukaus, who this is the best Chris Daukaus we've ever seen. This guy has been looking very good. I checked his Instagram the other day, and it's just crazy to see that the shape Daukaus is in now compared to some of his regional scene fights. Like back in his regional scene days, like it looked like he did not really care at all about anything. He just wanted to go in there and beat some guys up. But now, like he's taking this serious. He's in serious shape. And I heard that he's actually going to be retiring from his full-time police officer job following the fight the next day. So you can tell that Chris Daukaus is very, very invested into his career, especially now. He's 31 years old, which is very young for the heavyweight division. And I think he has some serious upside. He's supposedly a black belt in BJJ. His brother, Kyle Daukaus, is a very good grappler himself. He has very fast hands. He has a lot of power, a lot of great stuff to like from Daukaus. On the Shamil side, I like him as well. I like his game. He can get takedowns, good striker as well. So I think it's a very good fight. We'll take a look at the last couple of fights between the two. Shamil is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Did get knocked out to Darrick Lewis. No shame in that. Knocked out Shea Sherman. Took Arlovsky to a decision. Beat him by decision there. He knocked out Marcin Tybura. And then he lost by KO against Curtis Blades. So you take a look there. He's fighting some really good competition. KO lost to Curtis Blades. No shame in that. KO lost to Darrick Lewis. No shame in that. Some good wins. Andre Arlovsky, Tybura, Sherman. I mean, some solid fights there. And then you take a look at Chris Daukaus, made his UFC debut against Parker Porter. I believe Daukaus was an underdog in that fight. I did not bet it, but I remember having a ton of Daukaus on DraftKings. I think I bet the under. And then he knocked out Rogerio Nascimento, who we just saw last night. Knocked him out in like the first minute of the fight. And then he knocked out old man Oleinik as well. So Daukaus is on some run. I think he's in the prime of his career. I think he's in the best shape of his life. And I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this fight, Uncle Weezy.
Yeah, this is one I'm very excited about. I've been low-key high on Abdul-Rahimov ever since I saw him make his debut. he has really smooth striking. When you watch this guy strike, it just looks like he could have been a boxer. His hands are fast. Everything that he looks like he does fundamentally perfect. He's real smooth. And he's really well-rounded, too. When we look at Abdul-Rahimov's last 5, we see a loss by KO to Blades. He's the last guy to beat Tybura, and we know what kind of a run Tybura's been on. He decisioned Arlovsky, knocked out Sherman, and then that loss to Derrick Lewis. A lot of people don't remember that fight. That was a main event. It was a 5-round fight, and Abdul-Rahimov won all 3 of the first rounds. And if that fight hadn't been a 5-round fight, this guy Abdul-Rahimov would have been 4 out of his last 5 and had wins over Tybura, Derrick Lewis, and Arlovsky, and then Sherman. But we talked about the layoff, right? And you told me, you said, so you used some big word that sounded like pneumonia. I'm like, what is that? And you said it's a punctured lung. So Abdul-Rahimov has not fought in a while. I can get the last date. We do want to take a look at the last time that he fought because it's been a minute. And it might take me a while to get through this. But, yeah, Abdul-Rahimov, really good, well-rounded. He used his wrestling very well against Derrick Lewis, and that's very important because that is a place where we could actually see Abdul-Rahimov have an advantage here. Even though Daukaus is a black belt, Abdul-Rahimov is very good on the ground. He's a master of sport and sambo, like a lot of these Dagestani guys are. So none of these guys are any joke with their wrestling or with their ground game. But for Abdul-Rahimov, we haven't seen him since September 7th of 2019. So it's been almost a 2-year layoff, and this man is 39 years old, and he's one of those Russians that's 39 that looks like he's about 61. So we really don't know how old this guy is. But now let's just get into the numbers here. Abdul-Rahimov, 8 years older, but the height and the reach are the same. They're both orthodox fighters. Abdul-Rahimov, 11 more pro fights, about 150 more minutes of cage time. So definitely more experience for Abdul-Rahimov. A 20-5 record for Abdul-Rahimov, for 11-3 for Daukaus. We got more than twice as many fights in the UFC. 85 minutes of cage time for Shamil, but only 7 minutes of cage time in 3 fights for Chris Daukaus. So that always worries me a little bit when you see guys just go in and then come right back out. When it looks really easy, sometimes it's hard to picture how these guys are going to lose, because eventually they're going to lose. Everybody does, unless you're Habib, unless you're John Jones, everybody loses. And we're going to see all these guys lose at some point. How would Chris Daukaus lose this fight? That's the question we need to ask ourselves, because he is the favorite here. He's the younger man. He's definitely shown a lot more. He's had more fights in the last 2 years. Probably 4 fights since the last time that Abdul-Rahimov even stepped in the cage. So we see that Chris Daukaus has finished 100% of his UFC wins by knockout, 91% of his pro wins by knockout. So this guy is definitely a knockout artist. He's going to be at his best when this fight is on the feet, even though Shamil is an excellent striker in his own right. But we see Shamil here has 20% of his pro wins by submission, 45% by knockout. So we've seen Shamil go to his grappling way more than we have seen Daukaus in his pro career. So I'm just going to assume that for MMA purposes right now, Shamil's the better grappler because we've seen him go to it more. Chris Daukaus, while he is a black belt, and we know that he trains at Martinez BJJ, and that's a great camp, we haven't seen him use it as much in the cage, right? So we can't just assume that he's going to be any better than Shamil here. How do they lose? Chris Daukaus has 3 losses. All of them have come inside the distance. 2 by knockout, 1 by sub. And for Shamil Abdul-Rahimov, we have 5 losses. 4 of them have come inside the distance. So between the 8 losses of Daukaus and Abdul-Rahimov combined, 7 of them have finished inside the distance. What do we love there, Brady? We love the under when that happens, right? I mean, that's how we got to do it. And we got to look at how these guys lose fights. And if they're all losing inside the distance, it just screams violence. This is how we've been hitting these violence bet lately. We look at the losses. We don't look at the wins. We look at the losses. That's the best way to do it. and we've got 7 of 8 finishing inside the distance. 70, that's 78 point something percent. We could take that. We'll take that. Or that's 87%. The line is probably not going to be juiced that much, so I'm already liking the under here. And then when we look at the striking statistics, we'll see that Abdul-Rahimov lands 2.45 and absorbs 2.45, right, in a much bigger sample size. But then we look at Chris Daukaus, he lands 11.78 and only absorbs 3.22. So that's how dominant he's been. He's attempting 19.07 significant strikes per minute. We'd be hard-pressed to find a flyweight that averages that many significant strikes per minute. So Daukaus is going to want this right in the center of the cage, and he's going to want to use his hands. And while I don't think Shamil will be completely out of his depth there, I think that we're going to really need to see Shamil go to his wrestling if he wants to make Chris Daukaus uncomfortable. So how has Abdul-Rahimov wrestled thus far? 7 for 29 on his takedown attempts in 8 fights. So that's almost 4 takedown attempts per fight. Only a 24.14% takedown percentage. We'd like to see that higher. And he's averaging 1.23 takedown attempts per 15 minutes. With those takedown attempts, he's still only getting about 14.36% control time, and he's allowing 11.44, while Daukaus is getting 18.22% control time and only allowing 5.61. So one of the grapplers that we saw Daukaus fight was Nascimento. And he knocked out Nascimento, but he did stop the takedown attempt. As we see that Chris Daukaus has had 1 takedown attempt against him, and it was from Nascimento, and he stopped it. So we could see Daukaus stop the takedown attempts, keep this fight on the feet, and knock out Shamil Abdul-Rahimov. He's getting old. He's 39 years old. He's coming back from a punctured lung. We haven't seen him in almost 2 years here. But I want to caution everybody who's on the Daukaus side and just remind you that we haven't seen enough of Daukaus for this guy to be crowned the next heavyweight champion yet. You know, he's going to have to beat a veteran he already beat Oleinik, but Oleinik is in his 40s. Oleinek's got like over 70 professional fights. Shamil Abdul-Rahimov is a much different threat, and his striking is way better than Oleinik's is, and his ground game, while not nearly as dangerous as Oleinik's, is very good for the mixed martial arts space. I'm kind of high on Abdul-Rahimov here. If you're on the Abdul-Rahimov side, I would say that you don't have to rush to the window here because Daukaus has shown so much so far in his UFC career. He's looked incredible. I can see why everybody's on him here, but he's less experienced. In my opinion, from what I've seen of Abdul-Rahimov's game, Daukaus is less well-rounded. So I want to be careful here. I just want to be careful because Daukaus has looked so good in his 3 fights, but against lower-level competition, that when he is taking this step up to Abdul-Rahimov, we want to make sure that it's not too much too soon. But still, Daukaus has looked so impressive thus far that it is very, very risky, in my opinion, even though Shamil's a great striker and he's very well-rounded and more experienced. To bet the dog money on him, I think I'd probably have to get him plus 200 or better. And who knows? He might get to that by the end of the week because Daukaus has looked so good and people are so high on him. I could see this line getting juiced even more. However, the last thing I'm going to say, Brady, violence. We talked about it, man. That's probably the best way to bet this fight. Bet that under. That way you cover both sides because Abdul-Rahimov could knock out Daukaus. It's been done twice. And Daukaus could certainly knock out Abdul-Rahimov. Both of these guys get finished when they lose. So the safest bet, in my opinion, here is violence. I think this is going to be a great heavyweight fight, though. Which way are you leaning on this one?
Yeah, I definitely get your point for sure. I'm more so on the Daukaus side just based on the fact that if you go back and watch tape on Daukaus, there are so many red flags, especially, for this fight because he has been taken down. After it gets past the first round, he does slow down a ton, and his takedown defense does not look great. He's been submitted before. I believe he has been submitted. I want to say he's been submitted. Yeah, he's been submitted once. I think it was by an Americana as well. But yeah, there's some red flags of people taking him down and pounding him out and him tiring out. The thing is, I just don't know if that Daukaus exists anymore. Like I said, he's in the best shape of his life. I think he's taking it more serious. But there were some red flags that I did see in terms of the tape. But there's some red flags on Shamil here because we have not seen him in so long. He is 39 years old. So I definitely get your angle there, Weezy. And if Shamil does go for takedowns, maybe he does have a path to victory here. It's just, I don't know, again, if it's the same Daukaus as, a couple years ago, and if Shamil's going to come back and look as good as he has been in the past. So those are my question marks there, but I'm with you. I'm looking at violence, and I will pull up those numbers. First, I do want to say that, Daukaus is a pretty big favorite, opening up -185, currently -201. And you can probably imagine that line to keep getting wider and wider as the fight week goes on. People have not seen Shamil in a while. People probably forgot about him. And Daukaus, he's a young up-and-comer. He's a prospect. He's somebody to look out for. People are very high on this guy. I do see probably more money coming in on the Daukaus side. So if you do like Shamil as a possible dog, I'd probably wait till later in the week to pull the trigger there. But me, I'm looking at violence. So they actually open up the fight, doesn't go to decision on Fine Dimes at -215. -215 for some reason. It got bet to -225. Like, even then, man. Even then, -225. Fight doesn't go the distance for this fight in a fight where, Daukaus is a finisher, 91% finish rate. He's been finished in all of his losses. Shamil, good finisher as well, 65% finish rate. He's been finished in 4 out of his 5 losses. And then you take a look at the under. Of course, they did set it at 1.5 rounds. The under 1.5 rounds is +125. Which is interesting. So yeah, another violence opportunity. If I can get the fight doesn't go around that -225, I might just play that straight, to be honest. Or of course you got the alternative under 2.5. So I really like. The fight doesn't start round 3. I really like. But yeah, even the under 1.5 is not a bad look. Any thoughts on those?
Yeah, the under is fantastic. The fight doesn't go to decision at -220 is not quite as good as the Costa Yanis one, but man, it's good. I mean, like we say, 8 losses combined for these guys, 7 of them finished inside the distance. So that's 87.5%. Now, if you're looking at an implied probability of something around -220, you're looking at like a 69%, 70% implied probability. So about a 17% edge there. That's a good bet, And Nigel said in there, in the chat said something, like fade the 39-year-old fighter, fade the guy coming off the punctured lung. I get all that, but this is heavyweight, you guys. You're not old at heavyweight until you're 43, 44. This isn't bantamweight. You could be 39 and 40 and still have some good years left. But, like I say, tough road to hoe, man, to come back after 2 years and they say, oh, you're going to be fighting the guy in Chris Daukaus who's landing a knockdown on 5% of the significant strikes that he lands. And he's #1 in the UFC right now with 8.41 knockdowns per 15 minutes. So, yeah, man, I could see why people are on Daukaus here, and I don't hate it, and I have no problem with it at all.
Yep. I mean, regardless, no matter who wins, you got to think there's going to be some violence involved for sure. So we will get to the next fight here. And yeah, another fight. Like, this card is really good. This card is filled with so many good fights. And I'm looking forward to this one. Punahele Soriano going against Brendan Allen. We have Soriano, who is 28 years old, 5'11", 72-inch reach, undefeated guy, 8-0. He is going to be at a 3-inch reach advantage there and a 3-inch height disadvantage as well. But you have Brendan Allen, who is 25 years old, 6'2", 75-inch reach. Take a look at the last couple fights. We did have Soriano beat Jamie Pickett by decision, which I do like to see that he's able to dominate that 3rd round. It was nice to see him go later into the fight. He knocked out Oscar Pajota, a brutal knockout there, and then knocked out Dusko Todorovic 10 times in one fight. I mean, he dropped that guy so many times. It was awesome to see. As far as Brendan Allen, he submitted Kevin Holland. He knocked out Tom Breeze. He won a decision over Kyle Daukaus, lost to Sean Strickland by KO, and just recently submitted Carl Roberson. So right off the bat, I do see that Brendan Allen has fought the much better competition by a significant margin. So, yeah, Uncle Weezy, curious to hear this one. I think the stats are very important in this one as well, and can't wait to hear your take on it.
Very, very important. I saw AJ in the chat asked if Puna's grappling has ever been tested. The answer to that is no, it hasn't. We've seen 3 fights for Puna, and he has had 0 takedowns attempted against him. So that that is what really makes this fight so interesting, because let's look at the numbers here. We got, a bigger weight class here in middleweights and two really young guys for the weight class. Allen, 25. Punahele, 28. Allen is 3 inches taller. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage, and this is a southpaw versus orthodox fight. So very interesting stylistic striking matchup. We got Soriano training out of Extreme Couture. We got Brendan Allen was training out of Rufus Sport, but I thought I heard maybe he might be training someplace else. If someone in the chat knows, but he was at Rufus Sport for a while, but I think he might be training someplace else right now. Brendan Allen has 20 pro fights and Punahele only has 8. Brendan, 16-4. Punahele still undefeated, 8-0. 177 minutes of cage time in comparison to 33 for Punahele. So much bigger time in the cage for Brendan Allen. Average fight time, even though Brendan Allen's getting it done and only has an 8.88 minute average fight time, it's less than half that for Punahele, 4.13. And both these guys are relatively new to the game. They're both young. Brendan Allen's been doing it for less than 6 years, and Punahele less than 4.5 years. So a couple of guys that are really young, are really well tested already, and are definitely on their way up, and have got a lot of steam behind them. Brendan Allen, 6 UFC fights. Punahele, 3. 5-1 for Allen, 3-0 for Punahele. About 20 more minutes in the UFC cage for Allen, and an average fight time between 7 and 8 minutes for both of these guys. How do they finish fights? Well, they both finish fights, don't they? Brendan Allen, 56% by sub, 31% by knockout. So that's an 87% submission. So that's basically 14 out of 16. And then we've got Punahele, 63% knockout rate, 25% sub rate. So that's 88% finish rate for Punahele. So that's 7 out of his 8 wins have finished inside the distance. Punahele's never lost, and Brendan Allen in his 4 losses has been knocked out once, submitted once, and beaten by decision twice. So, yeah, we see Brendan Allen with the experience advantage. He's a little bit younger, he's a little bit taller, and he's got a 3-inch reach advantage. So definitely on the measurables and the experience, we got an advantage for Allen. Let's look at the striking. Punahele, 4.46 strikes landed out of 10.22 offered, while for Brendan Allen, it's 3.35 out of 5.69. So Brendan Allen has been pretty damn accurate, 59% striking accuracy. It's only 43% for Punahele. Okay, so, power numbers. Both of these guys showing a ton of power so far. But Punahele Soriano is really on a different level. I mean, this guy is landing a knockdown, almost 4% of his significant strikes landed. And let me just say, we've had a lot of guys today, Giannis, Costa, Daukaus, now Punahele, with these crazy numbers up around 4% for significant strikes landed. We don't see those kind of numbers. For that metric, anything over 1% is good. So we're seeing some guys with some crazy fight-changing power on this card. And I just mentioned them to you. Punahele. And then we got Giannis and Costa. We got Daukaus. There's going to be some people getting knocked the fuck out on Saturday night, too. This is going to be a violent card. And we see 2.6 knockdowns per 15 minutes for Punahele. 0.7 for Brendan Allen. So for a guy who's known for his grappling, this guy, he's got 2 UFC knockdowns to his credit, too, in only 6 fights. If we look defensively, we see that Brendan Allen striking less than 40%. That is a very bad number to have against somebody that hits as hard as Soriano, okay? But Soriano landing 4.46, only absorbing 2.86, while Brendan Allen is actually absorbing more strikes than he lands. Brendan Allen lands 3.35, absorbs 4.18. And he is, a little bit chinny. He's getting knocked down on, 1 out of 181 significant strikes landed, so about 0.5%, and 0.35 knockdowns allowed per 15 minutes. So Soriano showing a big power advantage here, a big defensive advantage here, and he's just really out-ratioing his opponent. So while we've got Allen with the measurables advantage, the experience advantage, I see a huge striking advantage here for Soriano. Now, Soriano does have a high school wrestling background, and he was good, but it's just we haven't seen anybody try to take him down yet. So that's really going to be the interesting part on this fight is whether Brendan Allen is able to take him down and keep him down, because we know how effective of a grappler Allen is. He can be really sticky once he gets you up against the cage. He can drag you to the mat. He tries to get on your back, and he definitely tries to finish fights with submissions, and he will go for heel hooks too. Prior to the UFC, Brendan Allen has a fight where he lost to Trevin Giles, and he was rolling for heel hooks constantly in that fight, unsuccessfully, and wound up getting losing to Giles due to the ground and pound that he was absorbing, going for those heel hooks. So Brendan Allen has a lot of faith in his jiu-jitsu, and he will go to champagne submission after champagne submission to try to get you out of there. So it's going to be really important for Puna, if he's going to win this fight, to keep this fight standing where he has an advantage, and to land those shots against Brendan Allen's less than impressive striking defense. The problem with how that's going to play out is we don't know what Soriano's takedown defense looks like in the UFC. No takedown attempts against him. Now, like we said, he's a credentialed wrestler. He has a high-level wrestling background in high school, so we know he knows how to stop takedowns, but will he be able to stop Brendan Allen's takedowns? Brendan Allen so far is 50% on his takedown attempts. 5 for 10, 50%. He's averaging 1.73 takedowns, and he's even more active with submissions at 2.08. And if we look at Allen's fights, we see a very big stylistic difference here. Punahele, when you add up the control time numbers, less than 10% of Puna's fights take place on the cage or with somebody's back against the mat. With Brendan Allen, it's 70%. So only 3/10 of the fight is taking place where it's usually taking place for Puna in Brendan's fights. So the stylistic clash here is the control time. Is Puna going to be able to keep this fight in the center of the cage where he's most comfortable, where he's cracking you with those hands that are landing knockdowns on 1 out of every 20 strikes? Or is Brendan Allen going to get Puna's back up against the cage and going to make this a grappling match where he's going to be more comfortable, where he's going to be more dominant, and where he's going to have a chance to get Puna out of there? So that's the thing that I'm struggling to find out here. We need a little more information on what Puna's defensive takedown ability looks like here. If we look at the strength of schedule, Brendan Allen has, without a doubt, fought the tougher competition. I mean, when we look at the last 5 for Puna, Dusko Todorovic, Oscar Pachota, Jamie Pickett, Jonathan Pati, James Horn. And then we look across at Brendan Allen, Carl Roberson, Sean Strickland, Kyle Daukaus, Tom Breeze, Kevin Holland. And then even Allen was fighting some studs before he got to the UFC, like Trevin Giles. And he's had, Brendan Allen's been fighting at the top level since his first fight. So, yeah, Brendan Allen, experience advantage, height advantage, reach advantage, grappling advantage, and just being more offensive with his grappling and making it a dirty fight with 70% of his fights taking place in control time positions. If Soriano wants to win, he's going to have to use that striking advantage and that power advantage that he has. He's going to have to stop Allen's takedowns and keep the fight in the center of the cage. Which way are you leaning on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I like Puna quite a bit here, and you did mention that Brendan Allen has been getting takedowns, but I mean, you kind of take a look at who he's taken down. Carl Roberson, he took him down twice. Roberson has a 45% takedown defense. Kevin Holland, he took him down, I believe, twice. Kevin Holland has a 47% takedown defense. So, yeah, that's the tricky part. I mean, Soriano, we're kind of guessing here. How good is this takedown defense? But you mentioned it, state champion wrestler in high school. Also, somebody mentioned in the chat, he did go to college for wrestling as well, which is very important to note. And yeah, although we haven't really seen him stuff many takedowns, I went back and watched all his fights. Maybe, here or there he stuffed a takedown, but it was actually him doing the offensive wrestling. And let me tell you, this guy's wrestling is legit. I've seen it with Soriano pick up guys, walk him across the cage and slam him down. Does he want to do that against Brendan Allen here? Absolutely not. But I do think he could stuff the takedowns here. And if he does, Brendan Allen is going to be in a ton of trouble. Brendan Allen is very, very, very hittable. And you can see it on the tape. You can see it on the stats. The guy is there to be hit. He's very tough, don't get me wrong, but do you want to get hit against somebody as powerful as Punahele Soriano? No, you do not. So I like Soriano here. I think Soriano does knock out Brendan Allen. But there's some question marks. There is question marks about Soriano in his takedown defense, but from what I've seen, it looks solid, but it hasn't really been tested, especially in the UFC. It's been tested a little bit on the regional scene, but not enough to where we can really get a good idea of how good his takedown defense is. But, the high school wrestling background state champion, I believe he was, the D3 college wrestling, that's good news as well. It's just, I don't know. And another thing to note, Brendan Allen, prior to taking down Carl Roberson, who, by the way, I mentioned he has like a 46% takedown defense. Brendan Allen, prior to that fight against Sean Strickland, 0 takedowns. And he attempted no takedowns in that Sean Strickland fight, got knocked out. I thought that was very weird. Against Kyle Daukaus, 0 takedowns, attempted 0 takedowns in that fight against Daukaus. And against Tom Breeze, that ended fast, but 0 for 1 on takedowns there. So prior to that Carl Roberson fight, which Carl Roberson's notorious for getting taken down and submitted, I think that was Roberson's like 4th submission loss or 5th submission loss on his record. Prior to that Roberson win, Brendan Allen attempted only 1 takedown in 3 fights and got none of them. So that's very interesting to note as well. You got to think, I know Allen definitely has a lot of confidence in his striking, especially as of late, but you got to think that Allen's going to want to take down Soriano here. But I do think Soriano does stuff the takedowns if they come, and I do think on the feet it's going to be an absolute massacre, to be honest. I mean, Brendan Allen, you do not want to be hittable against a guy like Punahele Soriano. Soriano's young. He's in his prime. He's at a very good camp as well, as is Brendan Allen. So, 2 very good guys, 2 very good prospects, but I do think that Soriano has a very good chance of knocking him out here. And we'll take a look at the line here. Soriano did open up actually minus 220, which is honestly kind of where I wouldn't say he should be minus 220, but I do think he should be like a moderate favorite here. And he's currently minus 115. So a lot of money has actually came in on the Brandon Allen side. People probably expecting Allen to take him down here, which again, there's question marks about it. Allen now minus 105. I'm really curious to see where this line goes. Really curious to see who, where people are at this week on as far as this fight goes. Very intriguing matchup for me. I do like Soriano. The over-under is not out yet, but I do see the fight doesn't go to decision is at minus 260, and probably for a really good reason. So I'm assuming they're going to set the over-under at 1.5, and it probably does finish one way or another, whether Allen is able to get a takedown and a sub, or whether Punahele Soriano puts his head into the 4th row. So Weezy, as far as like the violence aspect of things, minus 260 fight doesn't go. Any lean towards the over-under in this fight?
Yeah, I'd go under, but, I think there's more value on the Costa-Giannis fight. I think there's even more value on the Abdul-Rahimov Daukaus fight. But, yeah, I could definitely, because I think people are just seeing, Allen by submission or Soriano by knockout. So you see, a path to finishing for both of these guys. But, Soriano's never lost, so we don't know if he's going to quit, if Allen gets the upper hand. And Allen has only been finished in half of his pro losses. So I see more losses by finish, but these guys have got 4 combined losses, all of them from Allen, 50% of them by finish. But both these guys are so good at what they do. You got to figure either Soriano knocks him out or Brendan Allen gets this to the ground and submits Soriano. So, yeah, the under.
I like it. So, yeah, we did hit that 100 like mark. So thank you guys for that. That is a new record. Also 163 in here, which is definitely a new record. So thank you guys for hanging out. Hope you guys are enjoying the show as much as me and Uncle Weezy are. It's always fun going through the stats, giving some early leans, some early takes, and all that good stuff. And next we have a interesting fight. Mickey Gall going against Jordan Williams. Mickey Gall, he is 29 years old, 6'2", 74-inch reach, going against Jordan Williams, who is 30 years old, 6'1", 75-inch reach. So Williams is going to have a 1-inch height disadvantage and a 1-inch reach advantage. In terms of the last couple fights, Mickey Gall, he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. A loss to Randy Brown, a submission win against George Sullivan, a knockout loss against Diego Sanchez, a decision win against Salim Tahori, and a decision loss against Mike Perry. As far as Jordan Williams, 2-2 in 1 no contest. The Tim Caron fight got overturned. He knocked out Diego Herzog, got lost a split decision after that, and then knocked out Gregory Rodriguez. Very good win there. And then he did lose his UFC debut against Nazardine Imavov, who is also on the card. So not much tape in terms of the Jordan Williams side, but we do have a decent sample size for the Mickey Gall fight. Anything stick out to you here, Weezy?
Yeah, one of the things that does stick out is Jordan Williams is type A diabetic, so I know that he doesn't like to cut weight, which is why he's a very small middleweight, but this fight is taking place at 170. So I'm sure whatever Williams is doing health-wise in order to make sure that he can safely make that cut down to 170, he's probably getting a lot of help from the UFC Performance Institute on that one, and hopefully he has no problems making weight. What I see here is a guy in Mickey Gall that got a little bit dominated in the grappling by Mike Perry in his last fight, and that really kind of worried me because when Gall came in, he was kind of like in this three-man crew with it was Mickey Gall and CM Punk and Mike Jackson, and they were all just fighting each other, and those guys were all really low level. Gall came into the UFC maybe with 3 pro fights or something like that. So Gall hasn't fought great competition here. I'm thinking that if Williams successfully makes this cut down to 170, he's going to have a massive power advantage here. Even though Gall's striking has gotten a lot better, I really see Williams knocking this dude out. And if Gall doesn't like how it's going on the feet, I think he'll probably try to take down Jordan Williams. But here's the problem. Jordan Williams has successfully defended 16 out of 18 takedown attempts thus far. Jordan Williams is very good wrestle boxer. He hits extremely hard. He has a cast iron chin. The guy is not a quitter. He is extremely tough. If Gall doesn't get this fight to the ground and get to his grappling where he's shown the most comfort lately, I think Williams is just going to be a matter of time before he finds his chin. Gall, less experienced. Williams, 14 fights, Gall, 9. Williams has been doing this longer, 2 more years in the game. Even though Mickey Gall has 8 UFC fights and Williams only has 4, look at the names that Gall's beaten. George Sullivan, Salim Touari, CM Punk, Mike Jackson. These are not wins that anybody cares about. He doesn't even have. Can you name one signature win for him? Because I'm only seeing Sullivan and Touari up here on the screen. And
CM Punk.
CM. Yeah. Okay. So Mickey Gall really doesn't have any signature wins here. And if you look at the names on Jordan Williams's resume, Imavov, Gregory Rodriguez, Ramazan Kuramagomedov, this guy's fought some tough dudes. And he did have a win over Tim Karen that was turned to a no contest because of weed. And that's bullshit. I mean, if weed was a performance enhancer, I wouldn't have sucked at college the first fucking time through. So we know that Jordan Williams is 2-2 in the UFC. He's knocking dudes out. He's got a cast iron chin. He's a great finisher in his own right. 89% finish rate for Jordan Williams and 83% finish rate for Mickey Gall. Jordan Williams has been finishing half of his losses. Mickey Gall only finished 1/3 of his. We're seeing some decent power out of Gall at a over 1% knockdown per total significant strikes landed. So he's landed 2 knockdowns and 166 strikes, but against some bums. He's absorbing over 1 strike more than he lands, while Jordan is landing more than he absorbs. Problem with Jordan Williams' numbers is I'm seeing a 35% striking defense. That is not going to be good. So that is a problem, but he at least is still landing more strikes than he's absorbing. We got Jordan Williams 3-6 on takedowns, 50%. Mickey Gall a little over 25%. Both these guys get about 1 takedown attempt or 1 takedown per 15 minutes. Gall, 2 submission attempts per 15 minutes, 25% control time for Gall. So it looks like Gall's fights have been taking a lot more in control time positions than Jordan Williams. So it's going to be up to Gall to wrestle offensively in order to make this a control time type of fight. Because if it takes place in the center of the cage, I know Gall's still young. I know he's making improvements with his striking. But this guy Williams, he's knocking people out at 185. So for him to come down to 170, if he makes his cut successfully and fight somebody, who's still working on his striking like Gall is, I don't see Mickey Gall winning this fight. In terms of the level of competition that they've fought, we're looking at, Gregory Rodriguez, that Ramazan Kuramagomedov fight. I thought that Jordan Williams won that fight. But, in terms of Gall's competition, the best fight that he had was against Perry. It was a close fight, but he still lost it. So, and Randy Brown's a good name too, but he lost that one. So yeah, I'm going with Jordan Williams here. What are you looking at for this one?
Yeah, I mean, I like Jordan Williams here as well. You mentioned the takedown defense. I think he has very good takedown defense, which is obviously very important in this fight. Gall is going to want to get this fight down to the mat. If he doesn't, although Gall's striking looks like it is improving a little bit, you got to favor Jordan Williams in the striking there. He has so much power, and what I also like about Williams is he throws a ton of volume as well. So I think he's going to have a lot of success on the feet. I think he does stuff the takedowns. Gall does not have the best wrestling in the world, and I think that's where he needs to get it in order for him to win the fight. I see Jordan Williams stuffing the takedowns here. But yeah, that's something important to mention. He's going to be cutting weight, so maybe wait for the weigh-ins for this one. That's going to be important to note as well. And I do want to see the odds for this one. Yeah, Jordan Williams opening up as a -150, currently -189. Mickey Gall opening up +130, currently +164. Yeah, I like Williams here. I think he gets it done. I think he stuffs the takedowns, keeps it on the feet. I don't know if he knocks out Mickey Gall, but it could happen. It could happen. He has a lot of power, lots of volume, and I do think he has a pretty significant advantage on the feet there. So in terms of like the over-under, we have the fight doesn't go to decision, -145. The under 2.5 is -135, opening up -155. So in terms of the over-under, are you leaning any certain way here?
I would say I would probably lean under, but this is not the type of fight that I would attack it because both of these guys are good finishers on the offensive side. They're both not really getting Williams has been finished in 2 out of 4 losses, but Gall, it's only 1 out of 3. So less than half of these guys' 7 combined losses have finished inside the distance. So I don't think I can get to the under bet, but seeing as I think that Williams could potentially knock out Gall, I don't think I could really get to the over bet either. So I'd stay away from a time prop in this one.
Yeah, I feel no really strong lean for me one way or another, but I do think Williams gets it done, whether it's by decision or potential knockout as well. All right, next fight here, we have Miranda Maverick going against Maycee Barber. Maverick, 24 years old, 5'3", 65-inch reach, going against Maycee Barber, 23 years old, 5'5", 65-inch reach. So Barber is going to have a 2-inch height advantage. Same reach there, and Barber is going to be 1 year younger. We'll take a look at the last couple of fights between the two. So Maverick did make her UFC debut against Luana Jojua. Got a TKO due to a cut stoppage. That was actually Maverick's first knockout win in her career. She looked very good there. Her striking looked much improved compared to what we saw in the regional scene. And yeah, she's somebody that's young. I mean, she's very young. I think she's getting better and better each time we see her. And then she went out there and beat Jillian Robertson in a unanimous decision. As far as Maycee Barber, she did knock out Hannah Cyphers. She did knock out JJ Aldrich. And she did knock out Jillian Robertson. 3 knockout wins in a row for Maycee Barber. And then, oh no, she was like -1,000 in this fight against Roxanne Modafferi. And, they were, saying like she got hurt in that first round or whatever. But yeah, Roxanne dominated her in the entire fight. And Barber lost as like a -1,000 favorite. Not the first or the last women's MMA favorite to lose at -1,000. Maria Agapova also comes to mind as well. But yeah, that was bad. And then she lost to Alexa Grasso as well. So very intriguing fight. 2 prospects here, 2 fighters that I think have a lot of upside. I think, people are really, really high on Miranda Maverick right now, especially, 2-0 in the UFC here, trying to make it 3-0. I think people are really, really down on Maycee Barber here after losing 2 in a row to Modafferi, to Grasso. But I think it's a very interesting stylistic matchup, and I'm actually very excited to see the stats in this one.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. We got the future of the flyweight division here. I mean, I would say it's Manon Fiorot, but she's 31 years old, and Miranda Maverick, 24, Maycee Barber, 23. I mean, so both these girls are just getting started. And, even as young as they are, Barber 10 fights, Maverick 11, great records on both of them. 8-2 for Barber, 9-2 for Maverick. Both of them right around 100 minutes of cage time. So even though they're young, they've been in the cage enough that we're not calling them newbies by any stretch of the imagination. Both of them with an average fight time between 9 and 10 minutes. Both of them with a length of career that's right around 4 years long. So Maycee Barber, 60% of her pro experience has come in the UFC cage, while for Maverick it's about 22%. Or less than that, it's about 18%. So, we see that Barber's got the experience advantage, 62 minutes in the UFC cage as compared to 20. Average fight time right around 10 minutes for both of them. Now, what's interesting here is in the flyweight women's division where you see fights are getting finished, maybe around a third of the time, we got some finishers here. In their 6 combined wins, we've got 5 of them have finished inside the distance. That's between Maverick and Barber. So that's very impressive. Both of these girls finishing fights in a division where we don't see a lot of finishes. We got an 88% overall finish rate for Macy Barber, and we've got a 67% finish rate for Maverick. So 6 out of 9 for Maverick, and we got 7 out of 8 for Barber. And neither one of these girls has ever been finished, even though in their 4 combined losses, we're looking at 0 finishes. So when we see that both these girls are extremely tough, and I want to remind everybody that according to Macy Barber and according to Macy Barber's dad, she tore her ACL less than 30 seconds into that fight against Modafferi, and she was getting the shit kicked out of her. She could have easily at any point in that fight looked for the door, and I even wrote it down. I said, Macy Barber is tough. She's not a quitter. I will always feel good if I have money on Macy, just knowing after that Roxanne fight that this girl will never quit, even if something doesn't start going her way in a fight. So I was very impressed by that. But because of those finish stats, both these guys really good finishers, but neither one of them has been finished. It's got me leaning over in this fight, strangely enough. Looking at the striking statistics, really impressive. Miranda lands 6 out of 12.25. Macy lands 5.21 out of 10. Both of these girls' striking accuracy is 49% and above. Neither one of them has a knockdown. Macy Barber has been knocked down, but Maverick hasn't. But Maverick is landing more than twice as many strikes as she absorbs. She lands 6 per minute. She only absorbs 2.85. And over at Barber, she lands 5.21. She only absorbs 3. So, yeah, man, both of these girls have great ratios, great differences with the striking, and they're both outstriking their opponents by a significant margin. If we look at the grappling stats, both of these girls are going for takedowns. Maverick has attempted 4 in 2 fights. She's gotten 3 of them, so a 75% takedown accuracy, while Barber getting them at a 40% clip. She's attempted 15 in 6 fights. So Maverick averaging 2.25 for 15 minutes, Barber averaging 1.44. Maverick 23% control time for, 17 against, and Barber 15% control time for, almost 30% against. So Barber has been controlled more than she's controlled her opponents. I think that had a lot to do with the Modafferi fight. And Maverick only showing a 50% takedown defense, but she's out-controlling her opponents by about 6%. So both of these girls, great striking. I think we're going to see Maverick maybe be a little more likely to have success with the grappling. But then again, Macy Barber, 80% takedown defense in her own right. Her opponents have only been successful on 1 out of 5 takedown attempts. But Maverick, 50% takedown defense. So if we look at the strength of schedule here, we're seeing some pretty similar numbers. Maverick's average opponent is 3.5 and 2. Barber's average opponent, 3.5 and 3. So both winning ratios, Maverick a little bit better. Maverick's losses just a little bit, wins just a little bit better at a 1.75 ratio to 1.56. And Macy Barber, 2 losses to losing competition. That's to Grasso and Modafferi. But, like I say, she tore her ACL in the first round and, wasn't able to win that one against Modafferi. But she got pretty well dominated by Alexa Grasso in the next fight. So, yeah, 2 young, up-and-coming female fighters here with a lot of finishing potential, a lot of heat under them at this point. One of these girls is going to take the next step, and I can't wait to see who it is because this looks really close to me. I think I might be leaning Maverick just a little bit, but I need you to talk me into one way or another here, man. Which way are you looking?
Yeah, this fight's very close. I've not taped it yet, but on paper, this definitely does look like a very close fight, and as you can see with the odds. So there is money coming in on Barber here, and like I said, I think people are very, very low on Barber. She's lost 2 in a row, and I think people are very, very high on Maverick. So Maverick did open up plus 180, so that's interesting. They actually opened up Maverick as a plus 180 underdog that immediately got bet to her down minus 170, and now money's coming back in on Barber. Maverick's now minus 135. And if you take a look at Barber, Barber is plus 115. She did open up at minus 210. She shot directly to plus 145. And of course, money's coming in on Barber now. Yeah, it's a tough fight because if this fight, plays out striking for 15 minutes, I mean, who do you favor? Do you favor Maverick, who, don't get me wrong, her striking is getting, it's improving, it's getting better, but do you favor Maverick in the striking? And for me personally, I don't. But I kind of think Maverick needs to get this fight down to the mat. And will she do it or will she not? That's a tough ask because Maycee Barber, very good takedown defense. You mentioned 80%. The only takedown was against Roxanne Modafferi. I think if it does stay standing, I think it's gonna be a very close fight. But Maverick does have the ability to potentially get it to the ground. But if she doesn't, man, I don't know. I know people aren't going to like this. I know people really like Maverick, but I'm kind of initially leaning Barber. Of course, I do need to get into the tape and all that, but I do see why money's coming in on the Barber side. I think people are counting her out after 2 losses. I think if it does stay standing, I think Barber will have success. And she's strong. Barber's very strong. She's going to be the bigger fighter as well. And if she can stuff the takedowns, although Maverick's striking is improving, I still favor the striking of Barber. But of course, Maverick's a legit grappler. She's legit on the mat. If she can't get this fight down to the mat, she'll have success. It's just can't she get it down to the mat? That's kind of where I'm struggling. But of course, I do need to get into the tape for all that good stuff. And again, like she's beating, Jillian Robertson, which by the way, I thought Robertson came in there with the worst game plan possible. Robertson in that fight with Maverick, I don't think she shot a takedown in the first round, which was very, very weird. And Robertson actually took her down 2 times. But yeah, in that first round, Robertson was 0 for 0 on takedowns, which was very weird. Maverick actually took down Robertson. In the second round, Robertson went 2 for 2 for takedowns, won that round, controlled Maverick for 3 minutes. And then in round 3, Robertson did slow down. She was 0 for 2 on takedowns. So a very questionable game plan for Robertson. And then in Maverick's debut against Luana Jojua, I don't think Luana Jojua is that good. So tough fight, man. My initial lean is going to be for the Barber underdog money, but it's a tough fight. I got to tape it. As far as the over-under you talked about a little bit, you were leaning towards the over, which is minus 200. I lean with the over as well. The fight goes to decision minus 175. I lean with that as well. Any final thoughts on the fight?
No, not really, man. I just think whoever winds up being the dog money, well, that's probably where the value is. It's really hard to know how this one's going to play out. They're both young. They're both improving. They're both, Maverick, 56% of her wins are by sub and 11% are by knockout. But man, has she shown some improved striking over her last couple of fights. So yeah, it's hard to know who's making improvements here, who's getting better, who wants it more. But yeah, this is going to be a close one, man. And I think whoever ends up plus money, that's probably where the value will be. I have no idea who's going to win this fight.
Yeah, somebody mentioned, I love the over 2.5. I love the over 2.5 as well. I don't really see anybody getting finished in this fight. But yeah, tough fight to call. Definitely going to do some more research on that one. But the early lean for me is actually going to be the dog and Barber. Okay, so getting to the next fight here, we have a very interesting one as well. Darren the Damage Elkins going against Darrick Minner. So Elkins, I guess something about to point out is he is 37 years old. He is 5'10", a 71-inch reach going against Darrick Minner, who I don't think those ages are correct, Weezy. I think Minner's 31 years old, right?
That could be. I'll have to look at it. That could simply just be a data entry error on my part.
All right, yeah.
I got Minner as born in 1990. Yeah, so he's 31. Yeah, that's okay. My fault. Yeah.
Oh, you're good. It happened. So yeah, 31 years old. We'll take a look at the last couple fights between the two. Elkins was actually on a 4-fight losing streak. Lost to Alexander Volkanovski. No shame in that. Lost to Ricardo Lamas by knockout. Lost to Ryan Hall in a fight where, believe it or not, Ryan Hall knocked down Elkins 2 times in that fight. And then he lost a decision to Nate Landwehr. Very close fight there. Obviously, Landwehr, not the best fighter in the world. And then he does submit Eduardo Garagori, who I don't believe he's cut yet. But if he's not been cut, I do think he will be very soon. And as far as Darrick Minner, he did lose, I believe it was his UFC debut against Grant Dawson by submission, and then he submitted TJ Laramie as a huge dog, and then he takes Charles Rosa and wins a decision. And it's interesting, that fight, because I literally thought that Darrick Minner by decision was the least likely outcome. And we'll definitely talk about why it was the least likely outcome, and he did it. And something huge to note is Darrick Minner is training at Glory MMA and Fitness with James Krause. And I don't know what it is with James Krause. I mean, the guy's a genius. And, he comes in there with really good game plans. And Minner was able to come in there against Charles Rosa and do something he's never done before. That is gas out after the first round. This is somebody that is kill or be killed. It's either he submits you in the first round or he completely gasses out and gets submitted himself. And I'm sure we'll talk about the finish stats and all that. But it's a hard fight to call for me because, was it just a one-off? Or does Darrick Minner actually have cardio now? Is that move to Glory MMA, really helping him here? So that's what's so tough about this fight, Weezy. I can't wait to hear your take on this one. But regardless, it's a Minner fight. It's going to be violent.
This is going to be such a good fight. I mean, Darrick Minner is so fun to watch, man. God damn, 85% of his wins by submission, and he's got 26 professional wins. So, man, that is really I think that's probably 22 if my math is correct. 22 of his wins have come by submission. We got Minner 37 pro fights, Elkins 34. So both of these guys really experienced, and Minner way more active too, which is crazy because we've seen Darren Elkins fight 34 times in 14 and a half years, but Darrick Minner's fought 37 times in less than 9 years. So over 4 fights per year for Darrick Minner. He's been incredibly active. And even though Darren Elkins has, almost 200 more minutes of cage time, he still has 3 less fights. So very interesting. But, then again, Darren Elkins has 23 UFC fights. So 23 of his 34 professional fights have taken place at the highest level. While for Darrick Minner, it's a little over 10% of his career that's taken place in the UFC. So Darren Elkins, definitely more experienced, definitely fought the better level of competition here over his career. The guy came in against Charles Oliveira. His debut was against Darren Elkins. So this guy's fought everybody. And like we went over the finish stats already. An 89% finish rate for Minner, 85% by sub, 4% by knockout. And for Elkins, it's a 32% knockout rate in his wins and 20% by sub. And Elkins is finishing about a third of his UFC wins. 5 of his 15 UFC wins have come inside the distance. And if we look at how these guys get finished, we got a 73% sub rate for Minner and 18% by knockout. So that means 91% of his losses. So 10 of his 11 losses have come inside the distance. While for Elkins, it's 4 of his 9 losses have come inside the distance. So, Minner is definitely a killer be killed fighter, but I think he caught a lot of people off guard by winning a decision over Charles Rosa in his last fight. If we look at the striking numbers over the huge sample size that we have for Elkins, we're landing 3.5 out of 9.18, 38.14% striking accuracy, not much power at all, 0.2%, 0.11 knockdowns for 15 minutes. Minner's landing 3.24 out of 4.61, showing a 70.43% striking accuracy, and he actually has a knockdown in his 81 significant strikes landed as well. So he's averaging 0.6 knockdowns in a small sample size per 15 minutes. Excuse me. And then on the defensive side, we see Elkins a little bit better, 3.08 out of 6.53 for a 53% striking defense, while Minner, his striking defensive percentage isn't good at 43.55% striking defense, but he's landing 3.24 significant strikes a minute and only absorbing 1.4. So super small sample size, and he controlled Charles Rosa almost the entirety of that fight. So that we can see, if we look at the grappling numbers here, that, Elkins' fights are taking place in control time positions about half the time, 36% for, 14% against, while for Minner, it's more like 75%. As 52% for and 22% against. So if we look at Darren Elkins' takedown defense, it's not good. He has only successfully defended 27 out of 46 takedown attempts for a 58.7% takedown defense. And we know that Minner, being the submission specialist here, he's got 85% of his wins by sub, while Elkins has only got 20% of his wins by sub. We got to feel that Minner is probably going to try to take this fight to the ground and do the same kind of thing he did to Charles Rosa. Charles Rosa is a very good grappler. So if he could do that to Rosa, he could do it to Elkins. So, yeah, we see the defensive takedown percentage not very good here for Elkins. His opponents are getting about 1.03 takedowns per 15 minutes against him, despite the fact that his opponents are only averaging about 2 takedowns per fight against him. So he is getting taken down a lot, although he doesn't get controlled a lot. Even though he's been taken down 19 times in 23 fights, he's only been controlled 14% of the time. So that's pretty good. If we look at the strength of schedule here, over this huge sample size, we have Darren Elkins with a 1.3 ratio. His average opponent is 5.65 and 4.35. Well, we got a much better ratio for Minner. It's a 3.25 and 1.25 record that he's average fighting. So a 2.6 ratio, but less experienced competition. Elkins' wins probably a little bit better, even though the ratio isn't as good. And definitely Darrick Minner's only loss comes to Grant Dawson. 2 losses in the UFC. I don't know who the other one is to, but it's still a 7-1 combined record. So he's only losing to the best competition, while the average guy that beats Elkins is 7.88 and 5.5. So another good fighter. So both of these guys, they've been around the block, but Elkins, 37 years old for a featherweight. He's getting old. A lot of tread on those tires with over 300 minutes of cage time, 34 professional fights. I mean, even though Darrick Minner has 3 more professional fights, he spent almost 200 minutes less in the cage. So, Minner the better finisher, Minner the better grappler. And since Elkins' defensive grappling hasn't been great here, I think I'm going to lean Minner. Which way are you looking on this one?
Yeah, I like Minner as well. There's just some question marks that I do have. So it's hard to look at Elkins, man. I mean, the guy's taken so much damage. He's 37 years old at featherweight. Just not a good recipe there. And I like Minner. I think Minner is very good. I think he has really good wrestling. I think his grappling is top notch. He has a ton of submissions on his record, and for a really good reason. He's great on the mat. It's just was the last performance a one-off? Was it just because Rosa can be taken down? We've seen Bryce Mitchell do it. He can't be controlled. I don't know. Is Elkins going to be able to make Minner work? Tire him out a little bit, or has Minner really improved his cardio? It's crazy to think about, because Minner, his whole career, he's kill or be killed. He gets a submission within the first couple of minutes, or he doesn't, and he loses. 10 finished losses for Darrick Minner. But, I do like that he's at Glory MMA and Fitness with James Krause. I like that. And if he does actually have cardio now, Darrick Minner is going to be a serious threat, because his one huge hole in his game was that cardio, because if he did not get that finish, he would lose. So I got to go Minner here. But, Elkins' game, Elkins has not been submitted since 2010 against one Charles Oliveira. And that was his only submission loss. So if Elkins, can survive the first couple rounds, if Minner does tire out, it could get very, very sketchy in that third round. So for me, I'm not touching the money line here. We see that Minner is a favorite. Minner opened up as a minus, or actually a plus 130. Minner actually opened up as a dog that immediately went to minus 135, and more money coming in on Minner. He is currently minus 175. And then Darren Elkins opened up at minus 150, currently plus 150. And I get it. I mean, Elkins, so much damage throughout his career. 1-4 in his last 5 fights. That one win against Eduardo Garagori by submission, where he implemented a takedown-heavy game plan, which is not going to work here against Minner. So I get it. I like Minner. But for me, there are still some question marks with his cardio. Has he improved it? Has the move to Glory MMA and Fitness really helped him out? Or was it just a one-off performance against Charles Rosa, who can be taken down and controlled? I don't know. It's tough. I lean Minner. So as far as like the fight, this is really interesting. A fight doesn't get the decision, plus 150, and the over-under. The under is plus 145, and the over is -175. That's really interesting. A Darrick Minner fight. I think we might be seeing some recency bias with the Rosa fight. Again, everybody thought that that fight was going to finish, including me. And now we're getting the under 2.5 at +145, and the fight doesn't go actually at +150. So for me, I'm kind of looking hard at that under. I think if Minner wins, there's a good chance that it is early. And if Minner does gas out, tire out, I think Elkins could potentially get a finish late in the fight. So for me, I'm looking at the under. How about you?
Yeah, you got to look at the under. I mean, Darrick Minner in his 11 losses has been finished in 10 of them. So, and even and most of them are by sub. And you know, Elkins, his last win was by submission. So, yeah, and like we said, you know, the recency bias has given us a much better line than we should be getting when you got a guy like Minner. You know, so 26 wins, 22 of them. It's 22 plus 10. 32, yeah, 32 of Darrick Minner's 37 fights have finished inside the distance. It's like 85%, and you're getting plus money on the under. Yeah, man, I think that's a really good look. I think recency bias is baked into that line, and then you're going to get an edge betting the under in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, and keep in mind that, you know, Elkins got dropped twice by Ryan Hall, and Minner has power. He has serious power. So. Yeah, I'm liking the under, man, especially at that price. The price, especially in a Minner fight, you got to look at the under always. I know it went to decision last time, but I definitely think there's some recency bias baked into that line. So we'll get to the next fight here. And yeah, I'm excited for this fight, man. You know, Kyler Phillips, he's been looking amazing lately. And Kyler Phillips going against Raulian Paiva. Phillips, he is 26 years old, 5'8", 72-inch reach, going against Paiva, 25 years old, 5'8", 69-inch reach. So Phillips is going to have a 3-inch reach advantage, same height. And, you know, something really important to note is Paiva is actually going to be taking a step up in weight, going from 125 to 135 here, which is interesting because Paiva, you know, a pretty big guy for the 125-pound weight division, usually has a reach advantage, usually has a height advantage, and now he's going to be at a 3-inch reach disadvantage here, which is very interesting to note. I believe he missed weight a couple times at 125. I do think that's the reason for the move up in weight here. As far as the last couple fights, Paiva did beat Nascimento by split decision. He lost to Kaikar France by split decision. He lost to Rogerio Bontorin by knockout. He knocked out Mark De La Rosa, and he won a decision against Zaga Sumagulov, which, by the way, I really thought he lost that fight. And then going against Kyler Phillips, who had a split decision loss against Victor Henry. He knocked out James Gray. He beat Gabriel Silva by decision. I believe he came in short notice on that fight as well. He knocked out Cameron Else, and then he beat Song Yadong, which that's kind of what opened my eyes with Kyler Phillips. I had some question marks about the guy. You take a look through his career, he's really fought not the best competition, but beating a guy like Song Yadong, that really did open up my eyes. And this guy's good. He's well-rounded. BJJ black belt, both guys are. Phillips, you know, great striking, great wrestling, just a really well-rounded fighter. And he's only 26 years old. He's training at a very good camp as well, an MMA lab. I think there's a huge ceiling for this guy. And then you have Paiva, who we'll talk about, a very experienced guy, you know, solid striker, a black belt himself. I can't wait for this fight. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Weezy.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one, man. And then I just want to go back to that last fight for Kyler Phillips against Song Yadong. You know, Yadong was probably about a minus 150-ish, 160 favorite in that fight. And that was a huge step up in competition for Kyler Phillips. He was coming off a wins over Cameron Else and Gabriel Silva. And then all of a sudden he's fighting Song, who I believe is 5-1-1 in the UFC. And he was knocking dudes out. So when Kyler had that first huge step up in competition, not only did he handle it with class, and he won that fight running away from Song Yadong. So now we've got Raulian Paiva, who's coming up from 125, you know, who's 3-2 in the UFC, but could easily be 2-3 in the UFC. He's had bad weight cuts. Now he's got to come up a weight class against a guy who's a natural 135er, who just outlasted a guy in Yadong who's got massive power and really good wrestling, training on a Team Alpha Male. I'm talking about Song Yadong, of course. So, yeah, this is shaping up to be a really good spot for Kyler Phillips. The experience, Paiva 23 fights, Phillips 10. Paiva 20-3, Phillips 9-1. About 100 more minutes in the cage in terms of experience for Paiva. About the same average fight time. And Paiva's been doing this about 2 years longer than Kyler. Paiva won more UFC fight. Like I said, 3-2 in the UFC. Kyler Phillips still undefeated in the UFC. About 20 more minutes of cage time. About 2 minutes more in the average fight time for Paiva. If we look at how they finish fights, Raulian Paiva is not a finisher. Only 20% of his wins by KO, only 15% by sub, so 35%. So that would mean 7 of his 20 wins have come inside the distance, 13 of his 20 wins coming by decision. While Phillips is knocking people out at a 56% rate, subbing people at 11, so that's 67. So that we're looking at 2/3 of his wins have come inside the distance. Paiva, in his 3 losses, 2 of them have been by finish, while Kyler Phillips' only loss was by decision. If we look at the striking stats here, we got a decent enough sample size. Kyler Phillips landing 5.32 out of 11.32 for a 47% striking accuracy. Paiva landing 4.46 out of 10.25 for a 43.5% striking accuracy. Both these guys have a knockdown, one knockdown to his credit for Kyler Phillips. And for Paiva, I believe that would be 1 knockdown as well. Kyler Phillips, really good striking defense at 62%. He lands 5.32, but only absorbs 3. Really nice, significant difference. Really nice, significant strike ratio there. While Paiva is actually getting hit more than he hits his opponents. He lands 4.46, absorbs 4.89. So Phillips, the numbers are really looking good for him for striking. He's better defensively. He's throwing more volume. He's more accurate. And he's got better ratios and differences than Paiva. And he's got 10% better striking defense. If we look at the grappling numbers, we see that Kyler Phillips is also very well-rounded here, as he's attempted 11 takedowns in 4 fights. Dude, he's gotten 7 of them. That's really good. That is a 63.64 takedown percentage. 2.88 takedowns per 15 minutes, 0.41 subs, and he's controlling his opponents 3 times more than they're controlling him at 27% control time for, about little less than 10 against. So Paiva only 1 of 5 on his takedown attempts. He's only gotten 1 takedown in the UFC in 5 fights. So he's averaging 0.26 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he's getting about 7% control time and only allowing 3% control time. And the reason he's only allowing 3% control time is he's had a ton of takedowns shot against him, 35 in 5 fights. So his opponents are averaging 7 takedown attempts per fight, but he's got an 80% takedown defense. So excellent takedown defense for Paiva. If he wants to keep it standing, he's been successful doing so. However, that has been against 125-pounders. He's going to be facing a bigger dude this time, and a bigger dude who's boasting a 63.64 takedown percent accuracy at this point. So I've got to give the grappling advantage here to Kyler in terms of being able to get the fight to the ground and keep it there and out-control his opponents, while it would appear that Paiva is going to feel a little more comfortable just standing at range and striking, but that could be a problem too, because Phillips is going to out-volume him most likely, show just a little bit more power and better defense. And then if we look at the strength of schedule, neither one of these guys has fought anybody that is knocking the cover off the ball in terms of ratio or tons of fights. So Zhumagulov, fairly new. Mark De La Rosa hasn't done anything. Bantarin, still fairly new to the UFC. He's kind of up and down. Kai Kara France, that's a loss by split decision. That would have been his signature win. And Alan Nascimento. Well, for Kyler Phillips, a huge eye-opening win over Song Yadong. He took a big step up in competition there, handled it beautifully. I consider Raulian Paiva to be a significant step down in competition from what his last fight was in Yadong. As long as he doesn't get overconfident, as long as he comes out with that same vigor that he came out against Song with, I think we should see Kyler cruise to a pretty easy victory here. Which way do you see this one going?
Yeah, so I actually bet Kyler like 3 weeks ago. Like, this is one that really stuck out. I looked into it. I looked into all the things that you pointed out, like the negative significant strike differential for Paiva. Did not like that for him. Believe it or not, he actually got outlanded by Mark De La Rosa, the grappler. who's I think's been cut since then. You got outlanded 22-19 in that first round. And to sum it up, I mean, I think Kyler's better everywhere. I think he's a better striker, more volume, more power. He's the natural 135er as well. I think that's huge dimension. I think he's the better wrestler. I think he's the better grappler. Paiva is no scrub on the mat by any means. He's a black belt himself, but I do think that Kyler can get him down to the mat, mix in takedowns here or there. And on the feet, I think he's going to outland Paiva quite easily. I mean, you take a look at negative significant strike differential. You do not like to see that. He is 2-2 in the UFC. I really thought he lost to Zhalgas Zhumagulov. And take a look at some of these numbers, and you go back and watch the fight, and I really thought Zhalgas did win. Zhalgas did get outlanded in the first round by Paiva 21-19, but Zhalgas did get a takedown round 2. Zhalgas outlanded Paiva 27-16 in significant strikes and also took him down as well. I don't see how that round was not to Zhalgas. And then round 3, Zhalgas outlands him 20-15 and goes over 5 in takedown. So very close fight. I did score at 29-28 for Zhalgas, but yeah, he arguably could be 1-3 in the UFC with his only win against Mark De La Rosa, who, by the way, Mark De La Rosa went on a 4-fight skid and got cut. So factoring in the move up in weight, factoring in Kyler being the bigger fighter, factoring in him being the better striker, the better wrestler, the better grappler, better everywhere, and also factoring in Paiva not being a finisher. So the odds that Kyler gets caught in a submission or by knockout, I think are very, very low. So yeah, I'm very high on Kyler in this spot, and I did bet him, like I said, like 3 weeks ago. I got on this one very early. So we see Kyler opening up -150. Oh my goodness, would I have loved that line, -150, and he is -275 now, and I expect that to get wider and wider, and I believe we'll see him soon at -300. And for a really good reason. I mean, I don't know if he should be like -300, -350, but, people are very high on this guy. I see a lot of people parlaying him up this week. I get it. I think he wins. I think it's a good spot for him. But yeah, give me Kyler Phillips here. I like it quite a bit. In terms of the over-under, it's basically, if you like Kyler, you're probably looking at maybe the under. If you're liking Paiva, you're probably taking a look at the over. I personally think it probably does go over. I think if there's any finish at all, it does come from Phillips. But I'm kind of thinking a Phillips decision here. Any lean for you, Weezy, on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't even touch the over-under in this one because, first of all, Paiva only a 35% finish rate in his wins, and Kyler Phillips has never been finished. So the odds of Paiva getting a finish are probably extremely low. And then, even Paiva, he's been finishing 2/3 of his losses. But you would have to count on Kyler really getting the finish. And I kind of feel like if you're going to bet that under, you might as well just bet Kyler because I don't see Paiva finishing this fight. So, yeah, I probably wouldn't touch the over-under. I'd probably be just a little bit stronger on the Kyler side here, maybe take Kyler by knockout. Man, he has looked really good lately, so I am not getting in the way of Kyler Phillips in this fight.
Yep, I agree. I do like him quite a bit. Hopefully he gets it done. Really big fan of Kyler Phillips there. Okay, next we have, is this really the co-main event? Is it really? Aspen Ladd going against Macy Chiasson. Interesting co-main here for sure. We have Ladd, who is 26 years old, 5'6", 66-inch reach, going against Macy Chiasson, 29 years old, 5'11", 72-inch reach. Something important to note is I believe Ladd's coming off of 2 major injuries. I'm not sure what those injuries are. Heard it or looked at it earlier in the day. I forget what they were. If anybody knows in the chat what those injuries were, but it seemed like some serious injuries that Ladd is coming back from. But Macy Chiasson is going to be 3 years older. She's going to have a 5-inch height advantage, and she's also going to have a 6-inch reach advantage as well. Chiasson training out of Fortis MMA. Very good camp there. So we'll take a look at the last couple fights between the two. Aspen Ladd is 4-1 in the last 5 fights. A knockout win over Lena Landsberg, a knockout win over Tanya Evinger, a decision win over Ciara Eubanks, a knockout loss to Duranda Mannery and GDR. And in that fight, I believe the weigh-ins, I think that was the fight where Aspen Ladd was like crying on the scales. And I remember going and betting GDR. I remember I had like a ton of her on DraftKings. I think she was like 7,200. Made a lot of money that night. But yeah, Aspen Ladd was like crying on the scales. I can't believe they let her fight. But she goes and gets knocked out by GDR in the first couple minutes of that fight. And then she gets a knockout win over Yana Kunitsukaya, which it seems like a long time ago. I'm curious to hear if you know it. Like, when's the last time she's fought? And then Macy Chiasson, she knocked out Gina Mazzani. She knocked out Sarah Moras. She lost to Lena Landsberg, and this is a very important fight. If you do, tape study and all that, I think the Landsberg fight is something to really, really look into, where Landsberg was able to take her down multiple times in that fight, and Landsberg was also able to take her down and hold her down as well, and ultimately win that fight against Chiasson. It showed that Chiasson definitely has some holes in her game that she needs to work on, and then she did beat Shanna Young by decision, and then she did beat Marion Renault by decision as well. So yeah, it's kind of taking a look at Chiasson in her record. Yeah, not that impressed. I'm kind of more impressed with the Aspen Ladd side of things.
Yeah, one of the guys in the chat just said torn ACL and MCL. I'm guessing he was speaking about Aspen. We haven't seen her since, I believe it was December of 2019. So it's been almost 2 years since we've seen Aspen Ladd. And yeah, that weigh-in against GDR was really difficult to watch. It was like, it reminded me a bit of the Stolyarenko weigh-in. She was just in really bad shape, and that fight, I don't even think it lasted a minute. I think GDR knocked her out with the first punch that she landed. So Aspen Ladd is somebody that I will never bet on again until I see her on the scale. So I am going to wait until I see this woman on the scale, because she has a super tough weight cut to get down to 136 pounds. And you know what? Macy Chiasson does too. I don't know how Macy Chiasson makes 136 pounds at 5'11". She's huge for the weight class. So this is a very, very interesting matchup. Two up-and-comers, two really good fighters. I was really, really impressed by Macy the last time out against Marion Renault. And then Aspen Ladd has been fighting really tough competition from the start. She's very highly touted prospect. So we see both of these girls are pretty young. Macy Chiasson only 8 fights, 10 for Aspen. Great winning records. Both of these girls only have 1 loss on their records. It's the exact amount of cage time. Macy Chiasson 3 years less in pro experience, but 1 more UFC fight than Aspen Ladd. Macy Chiasson spent more time in the UFC cage. Ladd's fights have been a little bit shorter. Both these women are finishers. Macy Chiasson, an equal opportunity finisher, 29% by sub, 29% by KO. Aspen Ladd, though, 78% finish rate, 11% by sub, 67% by KO. And Aspen Ladd has been finished in her only loss. It was by knockout to GDR, while Macy Chiasson's only loss has been by decision. If we look at the striking numbers, we see that Aspen Ladd landing 5.22 out of 9.43 for a 55% striking accuracy, while Macy landing 4.16 out of 8.41 for a 50% striking accuracy. Both these girls showing some power, about a 0.5% knockdown per total significant strikes landed for 0.41 knockdowns per 15 minutes for Ladd, and about 0.78% knockdowns per total significant strikes landed for Chiasson, about a 0.5 knockdown per 15 minutes. So both of them showing pretty good power for women's bantamweight division. Both of these women landing more strikes than they absorb. However, the difference and the ratio for Macy is much better. 4.16 landed for Macy, only 2.17 absorbed, while 5.22 landed for Ladd, only 4.84 absorbed. Ladd has been knocked down only once in 178 significant strikes landed. It was Jermaine Durandamy that did that to her. If we look at the strike or at the grappling stats, Aspen Ladd 6 out of 8 on her takedown attempts for a 75% takedown accuracy, averaging 2.45 per 15 minutes and a 44% control time. And then we look over at Chiasson, and it's just as impressive because she's attempting over 3 takedowns per fight. She's not getting them at a good percentage, only 21%, but she's still averaging 1 takedown per 15 minutes, a 1/2 submission attempt per 15 minutes. And what's important here for Macy, who is 5'11" and a 72-inch reach, is that 44% control time. Her and Aspen Ladd both have 44% control time. Probably, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 other fighters, the best control time ratios in this division. And if you look, they're both controlling their opponents almost twice as much as they're being controlled. So 66, 2/3 takedown defense for Ladd, about 65% takedown defense for Chiasson. So both these women have out-controlled their opponents. Both these women are outlanding their opponents, although Chiasson has been more efficient. Chiasson 5-inch height advantage, 6-inch reach advantage. She's been the busier fighter. The lad's coming off of torn ACL and MCL, and almost a 2-year layoff here. So I'm leaning Chiasson here, even though it would definitely appear, according to my strength of schedule metric and just looking at the names, that Aspen Ladd has fought the much better level of competition here. So I see Ladd having the better experience, having fought the tougher competition. I see Chiasson having some really nice advantages in the measurables and in the striking numbers in terms of she's getting hit way less than she hits her opponents. She seems to be much better defensively and much more efficient with her striking. And even though Ladd is the more efficient wrestler, it looks like Chiasson is the one who actually attempts to wrestle more. And I think that could be good, seeing how much bigger she's going to be than Aspen here. So Ladd's best advantage, in my opinion, is that strength of schedule, but I'm leaning on, I like the dog money here on Macy, and I'm thinking I might take a stab at it. I'm pretty high on Macy Chiasson here. We don't know how Ladd's going to look after the time off, but she's only 26 years old, so she should heal up good. We should see a pretty damn good version of Aspen Ladd. We almost always do, but you can't bet Aspen Ladd until you really see her on the scale. And I would, even if you're on the Chiasson side, I would like to see her make weight too, because she's got to cut a ton of weight to make 136. I'm leaning Chiasson here, though. I'd just like to see the weigh-in first. Which way are you looking on this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough fight to call, because I think the most important thing is Aspen Ladd is coming off of a not just a layoff, but 2 major injuries, and that gives me serious pause. And, I personally I'm going the other way with Ladd here, but I'm not going to bet it. I mean, those are enough red flags to make me stay away here. Just what I see in the game of Macy Chiasson, I think she does have some holes in her game. She was taken down twice by Lena Landsberg. Landsberg controlled her for, I think, like 7 minutes and 40 seconds. And Marion Renault also took down Macy Chiasson, the 44-year-old, twice and controlled her for about 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And Ladd, she has very good wrestling. Her top control is very good, and she has brutal ground and pound there. But the layoff, the injuries, do I really want to lay a pretty sizable price tag for Aspen Ladd? No, I don't. And then on top of that, the measurables, Macy Chiasson is going to be much bigger as well. There's just red flags, man. I mean, I'm gonna take Ladd. I'm gonna stick with my guns and say Ladd does take down Macy Chiasson. She does land some ground and pound. She wins a decision, but the layoff, the injuries, the size disadvantage are all really scaring me away. You're almost talking me into maybe a dog shot on Chiasson, but I'll stick with my guns. I'll say Ladd does take her down, exposes that takedown defense, and works her ground game there. But I think it's going to be a very close fight. But yeah, Aspen Ladd opened up as a -200 favorite, and she's -206. I'm really curious to see where that line goes. Chiasson opened up +170. She's currently +176. And yeah, really curious to see where the line goes. But yeah, red flags after red flags after red flags. I will not be laying -200 on Aspen Ladd. I think there's a ton more better spots. As far as the over-under goes, the over is juiced to the max, -220 for the over 2.5. Under is +180. Probably goes over. I mean, any strong lean on the over-under here?
Well, let's look at what these ladies did in the UFC. Chiasson 5 wins, 2 of them by knockout, 1 by sub. And then Aspen Ladd's finished 75% of her wins by knockout. So if it's that juiced, hell, I'd bet the under. Both of these women are incredibly tough. They're both really damn good. I mean, sure, it could go to decision, but when you talk about, 75% finish rate at the UFC level for Ladd and a 60% finish rate at the UFC level for Chiasson, I think there's some value in that under, although I don't like betting unders on women's MMA fights, but I'd say that's where the value is. But I highly doubt I'd bet the over-under in this fight.
Yeah, good point. There probably is some value. Aspen Ladd with her ground and pound, Macy Chiasson with her power as well. But yeah, no bet on this fight for me. You are going with Chiasson as a dog. Not a terrible look by any means. I will stick with Ladd, but I hate the line there. I think the line's way off. All right, so now we will get into the main event. Before we do so, if you guys can leave a like on the video, you guys are killing it tonight with the likes. We smashed the record by a mile. Lots of people in here tonight. Really do appreciate that. As always, we go live every week on a Sunday, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Me and Uncle Weezy will also be dropping a main event deep dive, basically what we're doing here, but just going even more balls deep than we already are. That will be on my channel tomorrow morning on DFS by the Numbers. And yeah, I mean, make sure you follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers. Uncle Weezy on Twitter at Weezy MMA. I believe, is that right, Weezy? Weezy MMA? He's got him.
It's at MMA Weezy.
MMA. I got it confused. Yeah, MMA Weezy. There you go.
Yeah.
Go follow Weezy. He's new to Twitter. Just got on Twitter. And are you liking Twitter, Weezy?
I like it a lot, dude. I'm actually kind of getting a little bit acclimated to it. I was even sending out some tweets last night. And I am really enjoying it. It's a great way to promote the content that we do here, but also I've met so many other people that are handicapping MMA out there, and it's good to hear, to chop it up with them, to talk about, what they like and stuff like that. So I'm meeting some really cool people there. I like Twitter so far. I'm glad I signed up.
Oh, I like Twitter. Twitter is a must. Okay, so we'll get to the main event here. We have Cory Sandhagen going against the return of TJ Dillashaw. We have not seen him fight in some time now. Cory Sandhagen, he is 29 years old, 5'11", 70-inch reach. Dillashaw, he is 35 years old, 5'6", 67-inch reach. I guess we got to point out the age of TJ Dillashaw. 35 years old, not the best look in the world. The layoff, not the best look in the world. The PED suspension, not the best look in the world. He's going to have a pretty big height disadvantage of 5 inches and a 3-inch reach disadvantage as well. So we'll take a look at the last couple fights between the two. Dillashaw did win a decision over Rafael Assunção. He did win a decision over John Lineker. Knocked out Cody Garbrandt not just once, but twice, and then lost by knockout against Henry Cejudo. As far as Cory Sandhagen, he did beat John Lineker by split decision. He beat Rafael Assunção by decision, lost to Aljamain Sterling by submission, and he knocked out Marlon Moraes, and he knocked out Frankie Edgar. So yeah, very interesting fight. We haven't talked about this fight at all, so I have no idea what you're going to say, and I'm curious to see what you have to say about this. I'm curious to see the stats as well, as I do think there's actually some really interesting stats in this fight. But Uncle Weezy, what do you have for us here?
Super interesting stylistic matchup here. This is what I would call a striker versus grappler matchup, but it's so weird because Dillashaw, when he really became champion, he did it with his striking that he was training with Dwayne Ludwig. But the problem here is that Sandhagen's got a 5-inch height advantage, a 3-inch reach advantage, and he's a switch stance fighter, so he's super confusing, constantly switching stances. He's so long. He can hit you with those long-range attacks that I think TJ Dillashaw's best chance to win this fight is to go back to what got him into the UFC, and that was that wrestling that he used. And we know that Cory Sandhagen has terrible takedown defense. So this is going to be such an interesting matchup. So let's just start breaking it down from the start here. We mentioned the measurables that Sandhagen has the advantage in. TJ Dillashaw, 20 pro fights, but Sandhagen has 16. Dillashaw, 16-4, Sandhagen, 14-2. We got almost 100 more minutes professionally in the cage for Dillashaw, a little bit longer average fight time, 5 more years as a pro for Dillashaw. So some more tread on the tires. Definitely he's the older fighter here. Remember, this is Bantamweight, and TJ Dillashaw's 100, he's 35 years old. Sandhagen is 29. So Dillashaw's getting to that point where he's starting to be considered old for the division that he's in. And then we also got to look into the layoff, and I'm going to get that amount of the layoff for you guys right here because that's also very important. TJ Dillashaw's last fight against Henry Cejudo took place January of 2019. So we are talking 2.5 years away from the UFC cage for TJ Dillashaw. And we also know that he was using steroids. He was using performance-enhancing drugs. And we know that looking at Cory Sandhagen's body, that he's not a steroid user. He is just a great fighter with really nice hands and really interesting, unique striking. And I really see Sandhagen having the probably having the striking advantage here, as good as Dillashaw has looked, because it's going to be really difficult for Dillashaw to get inside on him. If we look at the finish stats, 19% by sub, for Dillashaw, 50% by knockout. So we got about a 70% sub or finish rate for Dillashaw in his career. And for Sandhagen, it's 21% by sub, 43% by KO. So we're talking 64%. Both of these guys have lost half of their fights inside the distance. For Sandhagen, one of his 2 losses came inside the distance. It was by submission. For Dillashaw, 2 of his 4 losses have come inside the distance. They were by KO. If we look at the striking statistics here, very impressive on both sides. Sandhagen, 6.85 out of 14.21, 48%. Knockdown on 1% of his significant strikes landed, averaging 1.07 knockdowns per 15 minutes. Dillashaw, 5.23 out of 12.7, 41%. Almost 1% knockdown percent, 0.7 per 15 minutes. Dillashaw's ratio and defense is fantastic as he's landing 5.23, only absorbing 2.95. And for Sandhagen, also very impressive. 6.85 landed, only 3.89 absorbed. So he's landing almost 3 more significant strikes per minute than his opponents are landing. While for Dillashaw, it's almost 2.5 more. So both of these guys have been getting really the better of their opponents on the feet. And we see that Dillashaw has been knocked down on about 0.5% of the significant strikes landed against him. So it's about 1 out of 200. And then we're looking at 0.23 knockdowns against per 15 minutes. Now, Cory Sandhagen has only attempted 8 takedowns in 8 fights, and he's gotten 4 of them for 50%, averaging a takedown per 15 minutes, about 20% control time. But Dillashaw, we see 56 takedown attempts in 16 fights. So that's about 3.5 takedowns per fight. He's getting 21 of them. 37.5% takedown percentage isn't terrible. He's averaging 1.64, and he's getting about 24% control time while only yielding 1% control time. So even though we've seen Dillashaw do so much damage with his hands, and he's been such a great boxer, and that's how he won the championship, was knocking people out, what I worry about here is he going to be able to beat Sandhagen without going to his wrestling in a 5-round match? Because he's going to be much smaller here. He hasn't fought in 2.5 years. He's now, USADA's here, and he's not going to be able to cheat like he was cheating before. You gotta really think that if Dillashaw is going to win this fight, he's going to have to go to his wrestling. And this is a 5-round fight, so it's going to be an exhausting game plan to go with his wrestling. But check this out. Cory Sandhagen in his 8 fights has had 13 takedowns attempted against him. He's yielded 9 of them. His takedown defense is less than 50%. It's 30.77%. And that's interesting, though, because he's only getting controlled about 12.5% of the time. So if we look at 12%, it's about 6 minutes of control time, maybe about 7 minutes of control time, but that's on 9 takedowns. So Cory Sandhagen must have a pretty good get-up game if he's been taken down 9 times in 8 fights, but only been controlled about 1/8 of his time in the cage. So, that's something to really note. If we look at the level of competition that these guys have fought, we see a 2.33 ratio for Sandhagen, a 1.73 ratio for Dillashaw. And Sandhagen actually fighting a little more experienced competition. So the average Dillashaw opponent has a record of 6.38 and 3.69, while for Sandhagen it's 8.75 and 3.75. Sandhagen's losses are a little bit better according to my metric, and his wins are better. So I see a strength of schedule advantage here for Sandhagen. You've got that layoff for Dillashaw. We don't know how he's going to look. We got a 5-inch height advantage, a 3-inch reach advantage, a switch stance versus an orthodox fighter, and a guy in Cory Sandhagen. Let me just get this one last stat for you here. I want to tell you how many times Cory Sandhagen has fought since Dillashaw has been in the cage. And it looks like on January 19th, 2019, Cory Sandhagen had his 3rd fight in the UFC, right around the time that Dillashaw had a fight. And since then, he has wins over Mario Batista, John Lineker, Rafael Assunção, Marlon Moraes, and Frankie Edgar with his only loss coming to the current champion, Aljamain Sterling. So Cory Sandhagen has fought 6 times since the last time that Dillashaw was in the cage, and he's won 5 of those fights, the only loss coming against the current champion. So, Sandhagen more active. Sandhagen got the advantage with the measurables. The striking should be close. The question is, can Sandhagen stop Dillashaw's takedown? Should Dillashaw attempt them? And even if Dillashaw does get them, is he going to be able to keep Cory down? And if he isn't able to do that, he's probably going to get tired out, and eventually Sandhagen will probably knock him out. It's kind of hard for me to get to a bet here on Dillashaw with the layoff, with the no more steroids, and just not knowing, where he is. And then you throw on top of all of that he's a 35-year-old bantamweight. I got to go Sandhagen here. Which way are you looking?
Yeah, Jack Attack in the chat have brought up a lot of my points. First one is 35 years of age, 35-year bantamweight, not a good look. 2.5-year layoff, obviously a very, very bad look. Finishing his most recent fight, that is true, against Sandro Cejudo. Finished and hurt in other fights before that, that is true. Cody knocked him down, coming off a PED suspension. Another point I did want to bring up, he has Sandhagen all day. I have Sandhagen in this fight. You brought up a lot of good points. That the takedown defense on paper, it looks really concerning. But he has a really good game. He threatens with submissions. I do think if he does get taken down, he'll pop right back up, and that's only going to hurt the gas tank of Dillashaw. We talk about it week in and week out. When somebody gets a takedown and their opponent's able to pop back up, that's really going to affect the gas tank of the guy that's going for the takedowns, and either they're not successful, or if they get him and do nothing with that takedown, it's only going to affect the gas tank. And he has 5 rounds. Is he going to come out here and wrestle for 5 rounds? I kind of lean towards no. And there's just so many things going against Dillashaw here. I think there is a path to victory with those takedowns. I think the striking, like you said, will be somewhat competitive. But, man, Sandhagen's definitely a tricky puzzle to solve on the feet. His striking's very good. He's been looking very good as of late, showing a lot of power as of late as well. And I like Sandhagen. I don't know if he wins by decision or some type of finish. I can maybe see like a late Sandhagen finish here, but yeah, I do lean with Sandhagen based off the fact that Dillashaw, the layoff, the PED suspension, 35-year-old bantamweight, just a lot of things going against Dillashaw, whereas you have Sandhagen, he's young, 29 years old, he's in his prime, he's training at a very good camp and elevation fight team. I like Sandhagen here, so we'll take a look at the line, and we do see Sandhagen as a decent-sized favorite, opening up as a -170, currently -185. As far as the over-unders go, we have the over-under set at 3.5 rounds, over -105, the under set at -125. Tough spot. No really strong lean for me. I could see it going over. I could also see it going under, so probably not going to bet that. Uncle Weezy, any strong take on the over-under 3.5, or the fight doesn't go to decision, is -210.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch that with this one because, we just don't know enough about where Dillashaw is at right now, And Dirty Red was saying in the chat, that I didn't touch on Dillashaw's speed or movement, and it's an excellent point. I mean, the guy, I was saying that Sandhagen would have the striking advantage, but that's because I'm saying that because, the measurables advantage for Sandhagen is going to make it difficult for Dillashaw to get inside. But make no mistake about it, Dirty Red's right. The speed of Dillashaw is definitely going to be a factor if he looks like he did back in 2019. The power, the movement are all going to be really big problems because Dwayne Ludwig has really made Dillashaw into a very impressive striker. But it's just that this is a very weird puzzle to solve in Cory Sandhagen. And the guy's 5 inches taller, 3-inch reach advantage. He's switching stances constantly. He moves a lot. And the way he sucked Edgar in the knee was absolutely perfect. So, yeah, it's going to be tough. Dillashaw could come out here and surprise us. He could wind up showing us the 2018 version of TJ. Maybe he didn't need the steroids after all. But I got to tell you, man, there's just too many red flags here for me to get anywhere near a Dillashaw money line bet here, and I'm not touching the over under in this one either. So, yeah, man, I'm leaning Sandhagen here. I think he gets this one done. Dillashaw is going to really have to show something and open some eyes in order to get this one. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, with all the question marks factored in, I don't really see myself pulling the trigger on Sandhagen, especially at this number. So for me, I know people love betting the main event. For me, I probably will just sit back and watch it. Nothing really sticks out. I don't really want to touch the money line of Sandhagen because if Dillashaw comes back and he looks like prime TJ Dillashaw from 2017, 2018, it could be a very competitive fight. So just with the question marks and all that, I do got to pick Sandhagen as far as a pick goes there. So, yeah, that's about it. We did it. I think went through 13 fights. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. We are here every Sunday, 7:15 p.m. Eastern time. Had a new record in the chat. Had a new record of likes. Feeling pretty good. So that's about all I got. You can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers. Instagram is DFS by the numbers. Me and Uncle Weezy are doing a main event deep dive that'll be posted on my channel, DFS by the numbers, tomorrow. We're going to go very deep into the Dillashaw and Sandhagen matchup. And then I will kick it over to Uncle Weezy. Uncle Weezy, let them know where to find you and what you got going on for the week.
Yeah, man, come check me out on my YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy. I do balls deep breakdowns of usually 3 to 4 fights every week. And you can check me out on Twitter at MMA Weezy. I saw one of the guys in the chat ask me what this picture was that's over my shoulder. They asked if it was Ross from Friends. No, it's not Ross from Friends. You shouldn't be taking MMA advice from anyone who would keep a picture of Ross from Friends. This, my friend, is Tony Montana right here. And he's got a beautiful little cigar in his hand. One of my favorite movies is Scarface. And one of my favorite rappers, Biz Marquis. Rest in peace, Biz. Thank you guys all for hanging out with us here on a Sunday night. It's great to see that there's more and more people watching the show. There's more and more people liking it. I love doing the show. I know Brady loves it. It's making my bets even better. Thank you guys for spending your Sunday night with us. I can't wait to do it again with you guys next Sunday. Check me out on my YouTube channel. Can't wait to do this main event breakdown with you later on tonight, brother.
Sounds good. Again, if you guys can leave a like on your way out, I will have my full card breakdown and prediction video out on Tuesday morning. I have a little bit more fights to tape. I think I have like 3 or 4 more to go, but pretty much already I have 3 bets so far. I'm sure you guys recognize which ones those probably are. But yeah, that's about all I got. We'll see you guys next Sunday, and good luck for UFC 32, Vegas 32. Let's make some money, guys. See you.